He was well studied, man. Well studied. Incredible player.
Yes, sir. We live.
What up? What up? Mic check 1 2 1 2. We in the building, man. Excellent connection. Shout out to everybody coming in the building. Thumbs up in the chat. Let's get folks in here, man. We got an action-packed show today, man. I got a whole list of everything that we're gonna be talking about. I mean, we're talking about everything from hip hop's correlation with sports and comedy, Sexyy Red and collaboration with Bruno Mars. We're talking about AI with Timbaland. We're talking about Wayne announcing the Carter with 6, Hot Boys tour, Jeezy celebrating 20 years of Trap or Die. But we want to start talking about the late great Kobe Bryant. I want to start this out like that. We got Siobhan here. Siobhan,
Yes,
you in here?
yes, sir. I'm here.
What's good, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How you?
I'm good, man. We can do a little intro while we get people in here too, man. Great discussion last week. And you know what I'm saying? I think that we really got somewhere with the discussion. I know people in the chat was like, Mike conservative, this and that. I want to clarify. I
No, they got
want
it too, Mike.
What's that?
They got it me too, man.
Yeah. I mean, it
Both
happens when you have
yeah.
those discussions. I think, again, I want to clarify. I want to make sure that all of the talking points are on the table so people can actually come together and, you know what I'm saying, and unify under, these types of topics where a lot of people would just steer away from speaking about this stuff. I think the best way to get everybody together, because we do need people together at times like these. Best way to do that is put everything out there and discuss it. And you know what I'm saying? We ain't got to agree all the time. And you know what I'm saying? And we ain't got to, patronize people either on that end. But it's all about, being able to make sure that everybody's represented in these conversations, even if it's just you and I talking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
the best way to do that is to pull every, piece of talking points out that you can, even if you're playing devil's advocate sometimes, or even if you're not, just making sure that it's a well-balanced and well-rounded conversation so that, you can get somewhere with it.
facts. I mean, it's heavy shit, man. When we talking about politics, some people personal get into it. Some people's like, it's so much that goes into it because it's such a passionate, conversation to have about, some topics that are near and dear to some people and some that, probably can give a damn about. Is about, being able to conduct yourself with stating your points from either side without it turning into something that it doesn't need to be.
Exactly, man. I appreciate you being able to have that conversation intelligently and, you know what I'm saying, and emotionally and all of those things too. So yeah, it was a great conversation. I think that people get to know you a little bit more, when those things are had. I see you got the Rattlers going on, man. You make me want to go put on my Alabama State jacket I got
Man,
downstairs.
I got a rep, man. I'm a Rattler. Man, solidified.
I feel horrible. I haven't repped Alabama State in a minute, man. I still got the jacket downstairs. I need to go pull that joint out. But yeah, man, we wanted to start off the show. First off, man, rest in peace to DJ Unk. Got the news. I think you sent it to me first. It was 2 people sent it to me at once. And Ron Vay sent it to me as well. And at the time, we didn't have any real, I guess, credible sources. It was just something that was online. And it was confirmed that, DJ Unk from fame of Walk It Out, famed DJ, if you will, hit song Walk It Out, passed away from a heart attack. And, rest in peace to him, his family. He was a big Oomp artist. Big Oomp's one of those labels that's really close and near and dear to my heart because that's one of those independent juggernauts in Atlanta that never really got their shine. And I had the pleasure, Ron and myself, ran into Big Oomp at it was an art and music festival or whatnot. He was getting honored and got a chance to interview him real quick. But yeah, he Big Oomp was huge in the city. Big Oomp is the foundation that DJ Unk was able to ride upon, and rest in peace to Unk, and condolences to his family and the whole Big Oomp family as well.
Yeah, facts, definitely. When I seen the news, I didn't know if it was real or not because I was just seeing it from like unconfirmed, like hip hop outlets. And then when I seen like Radio One posted, and then other like credible hip hop outlets, I was like, okay. And then when I officially seen, his team and people posting on the behalf, I was like, oh, okay, this is true. Because
Man,
now
about over here. I'm not to interrupt you. You said R.I.P. Beanie.
talking about
Can you
Kobe.
clarify for us, man? Huh?
I'm thinking talking about Kobe Bean, Kobe Bean.
Oh, Beanie. Yeah, Kobe
Yeah,
Bean.
yeah.
Well, R.I.P. Kobe Bryant, man. Now that was one that hit me, really tough, and I wanted to make sure that I had you on for this segment, man, because I know you said Kobe Bryant's your favorite basketball player, so I can only imagine how hard that hit you. Now, Kobe's one of those guys that I'm not gonna front for you guys. I wasn't rooting for Kobe all the time, but I feared him as someone who may have been rooting against him in the Sacramento series or when Boston was playing the Lakers. I respect the hell out of Kobe and his game, his work ethic, his ability to come through in the clutch time in and time and time again, and his ability to dominate from the position that he was playing at. Like he wasn't even he was very athletic, but it wasn't like he was dominating athleticism like, a LeBron or whatever. But he had that mental focus and he was just so driven where you weren't going to beat Kobe. And incredible player, man. When I got that news 5 years ago, I mean, I didn't want to believe that either. I was like, yo, this can't be true. What take me through how you got the news and
So
how you took it, in that moment.
yeah, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was in Orlando. I was going to the Pro Bowl.
Mm.
And we were walking right into the Pro Bowl. And first, my homeboy hit me. Was like, "Hey man, Kobe died." And I'm like, "You shitting me?" So I'm googling. Don't see nothing. I'm like, "Where you get this from?" And he was just saying the internet, the internet. And I'm just like, all right, I ain't mean nothing. So I'm going to ESPN, don't see no updates. Then I'm seeing people talking about, well, it was Kobe and then Rick Fox and something. I was like, holy shit. Like, and then his
I did
kids.
remember hearing that. I do remember hearing that now that you say that.
So now I'm not even thinking about the Pro Bowl. I don't walk past Sierra and everything. Sierra was there or whatever. I walked right past her. And like, I noticed her, and this is like before anybody knew she was pregnant or whatever. So I'm seeing, I was like, all right. It was a lot going on that day. I'm looking back at the phone, looking at
Sure.
the Kobe stuff, and I'm just like, all right, back to the Kobe. So I'm looking, and then like ESPN, I'm starting to see it. It was the official report. And then before they, did the national anthem of the Pro Bowl game, they announced it for the Kobe thing. You could see like the energy that was gonna go into the Pro Bowl, like it became somber in there, and then for the rest of the Pro Bowl, it wasn't even like fun to me no more. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, unfortunately, it was a lot of misinformation at first when it came out to that. And like it's a trend of that when it comes to celebrities or public figures. Where like it's like everybody's rushing to be the first that they say they got the story and not the credible facts. There was so many things that the family had to go through when that news was broke. First it was Kobe and Rick Fox and kids and all this stuff. Then it was like when you got the official news of who all was involved, it was like, man, it's sad, bro. Like I ain't gonna lie, I took it like it was my family member.
You're right, man. It's like people are rushing to be first on topics like that, which is real messed up. And that's why even with the DJ Unk thing, I wasn't asking you that, just being disrespectful. I just really, really tread lightly when it comes to stuff like that. Because we've seen recently, they say somebody has gone and, people post that ahead of time. Like we saw that with OG Mako, right? Like,
Jamie Foxx. People saying Jamie Foxx was dead and man's living.
yeah, you can't do that stuff. And with Kobe, I think that it was just so far from our mind that could actually happen that this can't be true. And again, you just see somebody who I had just seen him on whose podcast is that? Steven Jackson's podcast with Matt Barnes. I just seen Kobe on that podcast like maybe a week before that. And one thing I will say about Kobe, man, like I don't think that there's any great athlete of any sport, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, that's able to articulate the game in the way that Kobe was able to articulate basketball. Usually when you have the great players, they were so great they could just go out there and do it. Like they don't really, break the game down in that way. Usually that's the Kenny Smiths of the world, the guys who were, watching a lot of the stuff and being able to kind of take it in. But the greats normally don't give you that level of analysis like Kobe was able to do. and it was a joy just sitting there listening to Kobe talk about the game. Other than the 81 points game, one of my fond memories of Kobe and his career was when the Lakers weren't really that good that year, and I think they missed the playoffs or got bounced out early or whatever. And he joined the TNT desk, and this is when it was just Ernie, Charles, and Kenny, and he was up there with them. And the way that he was breaking down the game and all that, it was like he was breaking down body language. I'm like, this dude is different. This dude is way different. And I mean, because even when I look at Tom Brady commentating the games, it was more enjoyable watching Tom Brady commentate, the Eagles in Washington, because he has that playoff mindset and he's been there. But the greats don't really articulate it in the same way that some of the guys who aren't at their level, like Tony Romo, articulates the game. I hate to say it, it translates better than Tom Brady. Now, we know Romo ain't Tom Brady, but that's how special Kobe was, the fact that he was at that level and he could also articulate it at that level as well. Incredibly special player, man. Like, I remember when he came in from high school, man. I feel like we grew up with Kobe. Like, generations grew up with Kobe.
Facts. I'm going to be honest with you, Mike. Tom Brady is not good at commentating. I just want to let you know that he's not good at commentating. As great as a quarterback he was, he's not great at commentating.
I'm not going to fight you on that one.
But nah, Kobe, he was a true student of the game, man. And that was one of the last players I really got to see him be fixated on competition and winning. I don't see that enough with a lot of these players. They come out and they're playing for stats. A lot of them, I don't really see that fierce competition no more. And that guy, he lose, that meant everything to him. He's coming back for that. I seen that adversity and him losing to Boston that time, and the way he wanted to come back, and win that, and just the over dedication that other players would say he had, and how dominant he was at doing that, man. You don't see that.
I mean, I listen. I was always a big Paul Pierce fan. I remember Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker were, basically the dynamic duo in Boston, and I felt bad for Pierce because I felt like Antoine Walker was kind of giving up. It was like he was very streaky. He was that kind of player. And so I was happy for Pierce when they got, KG, Ray Allen, and then were able to draft Rondo and Kendrick Perkins and all that. Super team. Was be honest about it. Super team. And so I'm sitting there looking at Kobe, and granted, he has Gasol over here, but Kobe's going at these guys basically himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are guys that are his age, too. So it's not even one of those things where it's like, these are younger guys or whatever, and he's the young gun and he has like young athleticism. They're all pretty much in a similar class, and he's going at these guys damn near himself. He grabbed Ron Artest, had Trevor Ariza on another squad as well, but these aren't Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and KG type of guys.
Andrew Bynum, right? Yeah, Andrew Bynum at center.
He had Andrew Bynum, but Andrew Bynum went down in that first series. Now, they were able to have Andrew Bynum and Gasol, I want to say the second one when they won in 7. But then you hear Doc Rivers say stuff like, well, Kendrick Perkins went down in game 7. They never got a chance to win with their full squad. That's part of the game. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, man, Kobe, there's a lot of people that he could have went and teamed up with and got a superstar player with him. He didn't do that. I mean, I think Gasol's a superstar. People don't rate Gasol as high as they should. But he went for complementary pieces, or the Lakers organization went for complementary pieces. He did want Jason Kidd, but the organization wanted Andrew Bynum, and I think ultimately it was the best decision.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we was robbed of a couple combinations that Kobe could have got over there. Let's not forget, the whole Chris Paul fiasco. But one thing I can say about Kobe, man, is like he has something that a lot of players don't have, and it's just that will to win. You know what I'm saying? By any means, that over dedication, that being the person that's going to be in the gym putting in that extra work, while everybody is out there, partying and playing around, like I said, countless stories, seeing what he did on Team USA, seeing the stories of how he challenged other players. And, one of the coolest stories was when KG talked about meeting him when he was, he was a kid and he was coming, he was in high school, and he was talking about like, he came in the locker room. He's sitting in his locker room. He's like, man, who's this? Sitting in my place in the locker room. And he was just asking about the league. Was like, yeah, I'm about to be here, and so, and aspirations that he had about, and he lived up to it. Those words from KG itself. But you
was he the first guard drafted out of high school? Because I don't remember any guards drafted out of high school before him. You know how good you got to be.
I'm not too sure on that.
Because I know Moses Malone from the center position, and I want to say KG. He was a power forward. Then Kobe. I don't feel like there were any shooting guards that came straight out of high school and straight to the league. At least not in the modern era. You know how good you got to be to do that.
Yeah, Kobe came out of a hell of a draft class too.
Yeah.
Hell of a draft class. But one he has a story, just like how we say we seen Mike's story, but we got to see whatever it was to come after Mike and whatever legacy that's left behind. We were kind of robbed of being able to see the next step, because we're seeing like him coaching his daughter and stuff like that, but we never seen what would have been the next endeavors that he had, what would have been lined up, would he had gotten the commentary, would he have gotten the coaching, would he have gotten to, what would he have been doing career-wise associated with basketball at this point is real interesting. Would he have had a position with the Lakers? You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't get to see what, that next step of Kobe, and we got to see the ebbs and flows. We got to see the ups and downs of his career and his rise. That number 8 and that number 24, both of those jerseys are both legendary jerseys. Those both are Hall of Fame careers.
Damn, they're equal with stats.
Yeah, man. We were just so robbed of it so early, man, because before seeing his next leg after being, this great athlete, man. So it sucks, man. Rest in peace, Kobe.
Yeah, rest in peace, Kobe. I remember at the end of his life, it seemed like he was getting in more into the tech field. And of course, women's basketball, his daughter coaching her up and everything too. And, we didn't get a chance to see what Gianna could have been as a basketball player either, which is unfortunate. Kobe was one of those guys that seemed like, whatever he picked up, he was going to work at it and be good at it. And even when he had his endeavor in the rap game, he had some pretty songs. We got a what was that? Was it not Millennium Thug, but it was a record with Nas and 50 Cent. Mad Max to the super chat says MJ, Kobe, DMX. Only time I cried for celebrities. And Ali.
I ain't gonna lie, man. I'm with Mad Max, man. I took that MJ death hard too. I was like in college when that happened, and that was like a lot of misinformation with that too. You have CNN and Fox Sports, and Fox News saying one thing. Then you got that's the blog era, so you got the blogs in real time doing, like, it was so much misinformation. It was like he's dead, then you have reports coming out that he's not dead and he's in coma. Like, it was so much going on around MJ's death that it felt unreal, bro. I was like, how do we get here, dog? Like, and MJ is one of my all-time favorites. I got MJ with the Thriller stuff tattooed on my leg. That's solidified. Like, Mike is one of my favorites. I had Michael Jackson Moonwalker on video game on the Sega Genesis, dog. Like,
man, anybody who watches this channel knows me, knows how huge of a Michael Jackson fan I am. He's my number one, period. Point blank, period. And to the point where when this was happening, and this is 2009, so, it wasn't like Michael Jackson was being revered publicly, like he should be back then. And, people were hitting me like, you all right? You all right? And this and that. I think for me, Michael Jackson almost felt, because his aura was so huge and his fame was so huge, and he's one of those people that you don't really think that you're ever going to be in front of anyway. So it's almost like he wasn't real. You know what I mean? so that maybe that's where my brain took it. But I think what was hard for me during that period was all the fake love and all of the rewriting from the press and the media. I remember in May when he went out there and was announcing the This Is It tour. And I remember MTV.com, because we used to go on MTV.com for our news and stuff back then. They said, former King of Pop, Michael Jackson, announces This Is It tour. And I'm like, former King of Pop? Who the fuck is the King of Pop? You know what I'm saying? And then as soon as he dies in June, it was like, King of Pop, Michael Jackson, dead at 50. I'm like, really, MTV? I lost a lot of respect for MTV that day. Mad Max to the Super Chat says, and shout out to Patricia for the refs robbing the Bills yesterday. Ain't see a rig job like that since since they G'd up Joe B at the AFC game against Patricia.
Hey,
oh
man.
man.
Yeah.
Oh man. Shout out to OKC. Well, not OKC. Shout out to Kansas City, OKC. Shout out to the man. This is what I saw yesterday, and we can go into our next topic. Unless you want to talk about it too. I saw Saquon Barkley having his way. And in the Bills and Chiefs game, I saw a very underrated Chiefs defense that wasn't giving the Bills anything on the short run. And unfortunately, man, when you play against champions like that and teams that have that level of cohesiveness and experience, you don't want a close game with them. You're not going to win a close game with them. They just know what to do. They look very experienced. And yeah, they're going to get some calls here and there. It happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, LeBron's going to get calls. If LeBron's in that moment or Kobe's in that moment, they're going to get calls. Michael Jordan, they're going to get calls. So you got to go in there with a game plan to beat these teams. And, you know, I saw a lot of missed opportunities on Buffalo's end. And you're not going to beat a team like that playing like that.
I mean, one thing I could take from all of this, and, you know, shout out to the teams who made it, but one thing I take from all this is the Giants GM is terrible. You made two bad mistakes. Your little son told you, hey, man, maybe you should trade up and get Jaden Daniels, you know, in the draft. You didn't get Jaden Daniels. Then you made the decision to not keep Saquon. And you see, these are two dudes that one is going to the Super Bowl and one was one game away from the Super Bowl. GM at the Giants, hey, man, they need to have him looking for a new job, because obviously the decision is terrible on his end.
I agree. If anyone deserves to be fired,
oh my God.
Yeah. Daniels looked good. And I'm glad you mentioned Daniels, man. Really proud of him. He had a great season.
Yes.
He went out there and damn near did everything right yesterday. I mean, it was just turnovers that really weren't his fault for the most part. It looked like it was a blowout. Yeah. But it was a good game in the first half. Again, Saquon Barkley is what really made it a blowout. They had no answer for him. And I think in the Super Bowl, Kansas City's defense is dope. But Cook was doing some running on him. And if Cook was able to do that, Saquon Barkley's going to have his way, man.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when I'm looking at all of this, is like, okay, you know, it's a storyline here. Could this Chiefs three-peat, and then can Saquon get him a ring? You know, coming off what he came off with the Giants, and can Jaden, you know, come in there and do his thing? You know, Jalen. But shout out to Jaden Daniels, because the future is bright for him. All of this is a rookie, and he's undoubtedly should win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. You know, Brock Bowers had a great year, but Brock Bowers didn't take a team that just came off a losing season and take him one game away from the Super Bowl, man. You know, he did his thing. So shout out to Jaden Daniels, for real.
He didn't look scared at all either. Like, body language and all that was there. The only thing he looked was inexperienced in some moments, but because he is. Yeah. It is what it is, man. He did great for a rookie.
Yeah.
Mad Max in the Super Chat says, and before I forget, HGD to Jermaine, because he is still not allowed to share a birthday with the God Rakim and me tomorrow. Oh, yeah, that's right. Tomorrow is that day. Okay, so tomorrow is Mad Max's birthday, Rakim's birthday, J. Cole's birthday, and Rick Ross's birthday.
And that's kind of fire.
It's the best birthday day in hip hop, probably. Only rivaled by LL Cool J and Slick Rick sharing a birthday. And let me know if somebody else is,
Nah, they just Virgos. I'm about to say I
I
don't
think that I
know.
think that Andre 3000, Lauryn Hill, and Biggie are born in like the same week. Andre and Jada could share a birthday. That's a good one too.
Got you.
Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says Kelsey looked washed up at times during the regular season. Mahomes had statistical down year, and they still made it to the effing Super Bowl. Shaking my head. They did enough. They did. They knew exactly what and when and where they needed to do things, and they did it. I said that earlier this season. I was like, this team don't look like an undefeated team. And they ended up what? Losing only like 2 games throughout the whole season. All the games were close, but they knew how to win those games, and that's what matters. And when you have a team that can win close games, that's a dangerous team right there. The team that can be beaten is the team that blows everybody out.
Yeah. Let's cook up though. Like, we got a lot to talk about today.
We do have a lot to talk about. Okay, we were talking about the correlation between sports, comedy, and hip hop. Did you want to spearhead off that topic?
Yeah, for sure. Over like the last week or two, I've been going back and watching a lot of classics. So one of the classes I revisited was CB4, and then another one was How to Be a Player, and then it spiraled me just watching a lot of classics. You know, I'm watching Low Down Dirty Shame, and I'm watching old comedies like Martin and the Wayans brothers, and it brought me to this. And I know it's kind of like more relevant when talking about the integration of hip hop within sports and comedy now, because it's so common with you like Leangelo Ball getting into it, and then you're seeing like rappers like T.I. getting into comedy, or just where the bridging of the gap is. And I was like, man, to think about where this started, where it came from early on, and where it's at now, it's kind of a lovely thing how these three things have all been intertwined. Like from sports, even when we're thinking about the beginning Miami Hurricanes and then Florida State and them having to rival songs against each other in the schools, to Dion coming out and doing music, and and he was with Hammer and stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like Dion hopping into music, and then we're starting to see what happens with other athletes, and then even in the comedy world, we've seen that integration of comics being related to hip hop. We've seen Ice Cube get into acting and stuff like that, and actually being able to spearhead a comedy in which he was able to get comics and put them in a place that kind of brought them out to the world, such as Chris Tucker. They're familiar with from Def Comedy Jam, but what he did with putting them in there, Smokey and a lot of other people like AJ Johnson, and seeing John Witherspoon do his thing again.
When you bring up Def Comedy Jam, Russell Simmons and how impactful, Def Comedy Jam itself was for comedians in that era. That is a direct spawn from hip hop and the whole Def Jam brand and the, Rush Management brand. It's always kind of been a part of one another. Now, and hold your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt your thought.
No, you good. No, great point though, because that is
and those theme songs. And like I was watching Power, and I just did this expose on Get Rich or Die Trying being the greatest hip hop album of the 21st century, and I'm getting roasted in the comments. But when you think about the Power theme song with 50 Cent and Joe, that's probably our last, I guess, hip hop theme song from a television show, at least that I can remember. But it used to be a very common thing. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's theme song. Living Singles theme song, which I personally think is probably the best theme song from a show of that era. And you had even Martin's theme song is hip hop, inspired and oriented, and that was a common thing. The Wayans brothers, they had, and I was watching the Wayans brothers yesterday, and I didn't realize that Andre Harrell was executive producer there, or co-executive producer or something. I know Q-Tip did the music. And I think Mtume, the guys that made Juicy Fruit or whatever, did some music on there as well. So yeah, it was they always made the music a center point, and they all kind of worked together. And I think after we stopped getting soundtracks, because soundtracks used to be a big part of those films that you're talking about, it kind of seemed like it seemed to separate a little bit. Like, when did people stop doing theme songs and why?
Well, it's even when we were talking about earlier than that, when we are talking about like the
Yeah,
music that came before hip hop, like the black exploitation films that use like funk inspired theme
right.
songs, never. And now we're seeing how the new generation in hip hop and how it scores in the movies, and even Def Comedy Jam, or we're seeing artists transition to being actors and actresses, and then we also see artists are now getting into the spaces to where they're they're scoring music for certain things or making appearances on TV shows and stuff. Like Martin alone, Martin had Method Man, Biggie,
Yep.
Jamie
No.
Foxx had Busta, West Side Connection was on there on Jamie Foxx. We had Jodeci, even, they were R&B, but it's R&B hip hop. They were all on, Martin stuff too. Like it
Yeah.
was kind of cool then to see those artists cameo, like seeing Tupac on A Different World,
Yeah.
it was
Heavy
kind
D
of
on
cool.
Living Single. And
Yeah.
shout out to Heavy D for the Living Color theme song too. That was pretty dope.
Yeah, and Living Color, like even the hip hop there, even though we know Sean Wayne's now wasn't really DJing, but even having the hip hop aspect, him supposed to be DJ S1, and
Yeah,
the
well, my man.
like hip hop is so ingrained into the beginning of a lot of early films and comedies and whatnot, and we could
The
see
Fly
how
Girls. Like the
they
stuff the
all
Fly Girls was dancing to.
yeah, man, and they all kind of intermingled within each other. You know what I'm saying? Like you could see like uh uh what's the name? Comedians being out at events and they're rolling around with rappers. You seen Mike Tyson in Tupac. You seen Richard Pryor with whoever that's in, not mainly hip hop or nothing, but just the music artist he'll be around. You see Rick James and Eddie Murphy, like the intertwining of black music and black celebrities all kind of like wasn't the same thing, but matter of fact, just shout out to the Wayans brothers of always having hip hop incorporated within their films or black music incorporated within their films. Because now when I think about it, just from like the early movies of like their parody of black exploitation, when I'm gonna get you sucker, and then the black music that was in that, and then the early on with the Wayans and the Wayans brothers, and how they really kept it hip hop and a lot of the stuff, man, and Living Color and whatnot. Big shout out to the Wayans, man. But yeah, like a lot of those comedians, they kept it hip hop and whatnot. If you ever look at the old Def Comedy shows and you see the artists I was in the crowd and the mingling shit between that. I remember interviewing Play from Kid and Play, and he talked about their relationship with Martin and how Martin and them worked at at the JCPenney, I guess, with Salt and Pepper, and they worked at somewhere. It was neighbor. They all grew up and worked together, them and Herbie and everything. And shout out to Martin because he just did an interview with the Breakfast Club, and he kind of recalled a story. He tried to holler at Salt, and he didn't know that she was with Herbie, and he was like, "Oh yeah, my bad." But like just that hip hop, being together. But another thing is sports. You name Kobe. We got Kobe getting into sports, but Shaq did his thing with some greats. And he have a
Yeah.
platinum album from it. We see Dame now. We see Leangelo, but AI had some joints too. AI. A
Yeah.
lot
The
of
rapper Jewel. I think he went by the rap name Jewel. Something like that.
yeah.
I
AI
like
was
that young style. AI came real different with his flow because a lot of the times you get athletes that come in and kind of adapt to whatever flow is going on at the time, and I get that because that's not their full time job, so they're kind of just tapping into whatever's going on. But you could tell Allen Iverson was rapping anyway. he
AI
was
was
doing.
dope. He's
He
dope.
had his own flow and his own style.
You got
And
Ron
what
Artest
I say
producing.
though, I'm glad you mentioned Kid and Play because they're very important in this process. Like those house party movies are huge, and those movies were very very important in fusing film and hip hop early on. And not only was Kid and Play like a real hip hop act, but they also were legit actors in films that had characters that had storylines. and you had the trademark box with Kid. These guys were big. These guys were superstars. They had cartoons. You know what I'm saying? Like they were. I would say them and Will Smith, the Fresh Prince, if you will, were like two of the biggest at that time as far as this crossover success. MC Hammer too. I kind of put Hammer in a different realm because the type of all around entertainer he was. He wasn't just somebody who was up there rapping. You know what I mean? Doing a couple of steps. But yeah, they were very, very important. And I do think the soundtrack thing is important. And I'm glad you mentioned the black exploitation films because you're in my head, man. I was just listening to the Superfly soundtrack this weekend. Incredible soundtrack, man. Curtis Mayfield did his thing. And for those who haven't seen any of these black exploitation films like Black Caesar, Superfly, and all that, these movies were entertaining, very low budget, but the soundtracks were fucking massive. Like these soundtracks were like all time great. Like you would think that's where all of the money went. And they were. I think Superfly is one of the greatest albums ever. I know my dad would co-sign that too. But I think that what hip hop did was kind of piggybacked on that momentum and say, you know what, we're gonna make films that resemble our culture too, like Crush Groove, and we're gonna make soundtracks to it, like Curtis did Superfly, or like James did the Black Caesar soundtrack. And I hate that the soundtracks went away, man. I know the streaming era as probably one of the victims of the streaming era and people not buying music anymore. But I really hate that we don't have soundtracks anymore. And I've said on this show before, like Jay-Z is a huge recipient of the benefits of what a soundtrack song can do for you in your career. Can I Get Her is on
Rush Hour.
Yeah, that's on Rush Hour. I was gonna start with Ain't No Nigga, but yeah, that's on Nutty Professor. Who You With was on Sprung, and yeah, Can I Get Her is Rush Hour. Like those are important things, and I wish we still had soundtracks.
Yeah, facts. I mean, there are some good soundtrack. I don't think it's just streaming. I think it's the point that like the whole bundle of how they put out movies is different too with like soundtrack. I mean, like, because we still like you got Metro Boomin that did the Spider-Man, animated movie soundtrack. And then we got Kendrick, they did the first Black Panther soundtrack, which was amazing. And then the Judas and the Black Messiah soundtrack was pretty good too.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're marketed the same no more. Like sometimes a soundtrack, I remember sometimes the soundtracks were just as good as regular albums. Like the Life soundtrack was good. Baby Boy soundtrack was good. Think about Above the Rim soundtrack. Like
I was checking the soundtracks because they gave you variety. You know what I mean? Like I was checking for those soundtracks because they gave you variety. You could have, you can get rappers at their best. You can get some R&B on there, and they made them complete albums. I would imagine, though, I guess from what I'm saying, as far as the streaming era probably helped kill that. I would imagine that the film houses looked at soundtrack songs as, okay, if we get, let's just say Jay-Z to do a soundtrack song and it's a hit record, and we have clips of the movie throughout the music video, and this shit's getting played on BET like 15 times a day, that's an extra commercial for us. And I think that with music television not being music television anymore, and that not being a running ongoing commercial day to day, the film houses probably just said, all right, well, we're just cutting that out of the budget. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. It was definitely hip hop was definitely used as a marketing piece with pushing those movies. Definitely.
Mad Max says, I always looked at hip hop as musical comedy, and I think it's closer to comedy than sports, just off the fact that punchlines come from comedy, and both hip hop and comedy speak to social environments. What do you think about that? I think that's an astute observation.
I actually agree. And the thing with like athletes in music, it's like ballers want to be rappers, rappers want to be ballers. And that's how I always looked at it. Like it's the flashiness and the being the best at whatever. It's like the lifestyles that's kind of like what's intertwined within sports and music. Like when you look at Deion Sanders, it's prime time. The character of prime time, of prime. And the the Money song that he had, and then you see him with Hammer, and you see, like you see that, but then you also could flip that, and we're talking about comedy in this, and they're kind of like, he's right, they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, the bridging of the gaps are how they're intertwined so much. I mean, look at the Arsenio Hall show, and so many great moments they have from there, and how it was comedy. He's a comedian, but the influence on hip hop that was there, and the figures that he had come there, or like we said, how these sitcoms, we have rappers or musical figures that put themselves into that realm where they're not even being looked at as musical figures no more, like a Queen Latifah or LL Cool J or Ice Cube. These are guys that solidifies themselves in hip hop now, that newer generations have to go back and do history and didn't even know that these people were artists at some point,
I think
Um,
it's a good transition for a lot of artists too, because to be an MC and to be a hip hop artist or just an MC on the forefront, you got to have a certain level of swagger. You got to have confidence, and you got to have that ability to improv. And kind of like what Mad Max is saying, what I like what Mad Max is talking about. Even if you look at the battle and you look at the whole battle rap scene and how that's set up, and you're face to face, you going at that other person just like any comedian would when you joning. Like, people would joning at school and the lunch table. You say one thing and that other person says something back. You say one thing, the other person says something back. And that is kind of like how the battle rap exchange is. Who could give you the funniest punchline? Who could give you the wittiest comeback? And you got to come back quick. And that's what any comedian would have to do, whether it's on stage. You got to garner the crowd. They're both emceeing. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're doing stand-up comedy, especially, you're emceeing. I haven't seen any of T.I.'s comedy shows, and I should, just to, so I can kind of, be able to have an opinion on it. But I would imagine, just based on him being an MC and being the MC that he should be good at it. Now, I will say this. I think Ludacris is funny. I always thought Ludacris is funny. I think Ludacris's skits were always hilarious. Ludacris used to even be funny on the radio. And I think 2 Chainz is funny too. So I would take them as more comedians, but just having the skill set of what a comedian needs, as far as like, punchlines and catchy comebacks and just being quick on your feet. T.I. should have all of those things. But I've never viewed T.I. as a quote unquote funny person, if you will.
The thing about, you can get the super chat.
I was gonna say, Mad Max says, and the best comics like hip hop come from the East Coast. And Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says, Hove's American Gangster album was an unofficial soundtrack.
Facts.
Okay.
Yeah, but like when we're talking about that, even early hip hop like tours, they had like comedians open up, like the NWA tours, the early Cash Money tours, they had comedians that were doing stand up, opening for them on these things. And now it's always kind of flowed so beautifully between comedians and hip hop artists. Now, though you say those other guys are, they're naturally funny, but I believe even though some people have jumped from comedy to hip hop, vice versa, and all that in sports, there's still preparation that go in each and one of these things. That just because you have the ability to do it, don't mean you're good at doing it. Like there's
Right.
I respect comedians because I have a homeboy that does stand up, and I know the preparation that goes into it. And those 5 minutes may seem like an hour of you being on there getting that set off. And it's the crowd control of that versus being crowd control of an artist, of a rapper in front of a crowd. It's kind of different. You know what I'm saying? Like they both are ways you prepare for them solely different. Like it's crazy the preparation that goes into comedy versus music. But just how they just float so beautifully, man. I was watching like How to Be a Player. And, that was a Def Jam. That's a Def Jam production. And
that's about Russell Simmons' life.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies. You know what I'm saying? That's one of my favorite movies.
Too.
And
I learned a lot from that film.
Yeah, man, just a hip hop impact from that standpoint, and even a soundtrack. I mean, what was it? Foxy and Drew Hill as a lead singer from that. There's a lot of great hip hop and comedy integrations throughout the time and collaborations. It's like when you really think about it, from TV to movies, and from soundtracks to now how comedians have even jumped into sort of getting into music. We seen Cat Williams, you know, get into it with, he was running with Dipset at one time and have actual records. I mean, remember he hopped into the beef with Young Guns on the track with The Game, you know.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you seen, like I said, you seen Eddie Murphy getting the music, and we seen, there was a few artists that hopped in. Chris Rock, No Sex in the Champagne Room. Like we've
I remember
already
that.
seen the correlation to hip hop and that. Or let's think about Dave Chappelle Block Party and what he did with that.
Right.
It
It was the Dave Chappelle show for hip hop in that time period as well. Like I always feel like
Mhm.
the the ground that Kanye was able to break from that whole backpack mainstream vehicle, if you will. I think that Dave Chappelle had a lot to do with that. I think the Dave Chappelle show, giving a platform to, Kanye, Common, The Roots, De La Soul. I think that kind of led to even what MF Doom was able to do with, Comedy Central and things like that. So yeah, I think comedy has definitely been a vehicle in at least in the 2000s for almost more of a, I don't want to say underground hip hop, but yeah, some of the people who weren't getting that mainstream notoriety.
I just
Um,
miss how hip hop was like intertwined within movies and entertainment a little
yeah,
bit more. Like how, like, remember we would watch a sitcom, we would watch a show, and then it would be like, oh, special guest, and the artist coming out performing at the end, like
yeah.
when the show was
They
off.
used to
Like
do that at the
that
end of
was,
In Living Color. I was
yeah,
watching New York Undercover reruns where they would go out there and have
yeah,
singers singing at,
yeah.
yeah, at at Torres's father's bar or whatever. Like they found a way to integrate music,
Yeah.
current music, into the content that we were seeing in entertainment, and we don't see that as much anymore. But again, that would be a whole nother discussion on the industry and all of those things. But
You remember the
I
Lyricist Lounge
think
show?
another crossover for sure.
You remember the Lyricist Lounge show?
I remember the Lyricist Lounge show. I love the Lyricist Lounge show.
Lyricist
They had
Lounge, man.
freestyles at the end.
Yeah, man. So, just that it just floats so beautifully, man. And it just reminds me of, man, hip hop. Hip hop was so dope, man, at that
Artists
time.
had so many vehicles, man. Hip hop had so many vehicles at
So
that time.
many, bro. Like you could literally sell your record from being in an appearance on a show or whatever and off like that. Like it was crazy. It was like damn near certain artists like were making these cameos, and it did a lot for them with selling something. Like I like how you mentioned like New York Undercover. I mean, just think about those episodes with Ice-T. You
Yeah,
know how
yeah.
big those were some of the best like episodes that people remember from New York Undercover. Or we I don't know, man. It's just so many moments in hip hop where rappers and artists have made those cameos on the show, and you know, I don't know, comedy, entertainment, and within that is float so well with hip hop, man. It's a shame to see how great it was and where we coming down to now, man.
Well, hopefully, some of those things could be revisited in some sort of format. Speaking of crossing over and crossover success,
Yeah.
Sexy Red has a new song with Bruno Mars. Now, I can't help but think that whenever it's time for somebody to, possibly cross over and get a whole nother audience, it seems like a Bruno Mars feature comes about. Um, I do want to get into that song and what you think of that song. But before we get into that, I know that over the King holiday, Sexy Red had a controversial post where she used the AI image of Dr. King, where like they were in the club or something like that, and the King family spoke out and about the disrespect and not playing with their father's image and those things. And Sexy Red apologized, and the King family accepted the apology. Great, and I'm glad they were able to come to that amicable, resolve. But my question is, why hadn't anybody in hip hop said anything to be like, yo, that stuff's not cool? The Dr. King images on these party flyers and other artists, doing those things, or Sexy Red. What Sexy Red might be the first artist I could think of that actually utilized that. But I'm surprised that, some of the hip hop elders who have something to say about a lot of things didn't speak out on that.
Well, I mean, she didn't make it. She just reshared it,
Yeah,
and when they called her out about it, she apologized. I mean, and she took it
yeah,
down. I don't know why she thought it was okay to put anywhere. I don't even know why people play like that. Like when I was in school and stuff like that, I seen parties promoted with MLK with goals in the mouth or a blunt, in his ear or something. So it's just ignorant, crazy shit. But you're right. Nobody really speaks on it. Every year I see it be disrespected in a way. It's just like they've been playing with his images and likeness for a long time now. It's like I can't have Sexy Red be the poster child for this because we've seen it in so many other. I've seen memes that's way worse than that. It was literally just her and him staring at each other in the club. It wasn't, it's crazy to see, but I've seen way worse.
I just hate that it had to be his family to actually say something. Like, you
I
know what I'm saying? Like,
taking accountability and apologizing and them accepting. I mean, she did
mhm.
what she was supposed to do. What else
No,
do
she did
people?
everything she was supposed to do, and she was big on that. And I'm glad she did that in the way that she did. And I'm glad that, Miss Bernice accepted it in that fashion too. It's just, I don't know, man. I guess like you said, we've kind of gotten numb to the misuse where nobody says anything, I guess. Because
I
even
mean,
when Nicki Minaj did the little Malcolm X reenactment with the "Looking Ass" song or whatever, I don't think did Malcolm's family say anything, but the hip hop community didn't say anything.
I don't know. Honestly, what happens when you say something?
Right.
What will it do? I mean, the damage is already there. I mean, people could apologize and do whatever in the first place, but internet, man, nothing. I've seen stuff that's absolutely terrible become jokes on the internet. It's not saying it's okay, but it's like you really can't win against these niggas on socials, man. You really can't. Um, I don't know. And then I feel like, the teachings of some of these people it's kind of crazy to hear because when we think about Black history in schools and whatever, MLK is one of the poster people that you're going to know about some MLK being in public schools
Yeah.
as a lot of other Black historian figures. But like, I'm not going to lie, like, a lot of people don't know their history enough for them to even give a damn of knowing the importance. And that's the sad part for people to
Right.
speak, I mean, it's sad, but and then some people just don't care enough. I mean, it is what it is. Like,
Maybe I'm harsh, man. I think the Sexy Red should be forced to go through a Black history course, just like, if she were to do something that depicted the Holocaust in this way. But hey, that's just me.
I mean,
Because like I said, a lot of people don't know. And
yeah,
and being being a young Black woman, coming from where she comes from and representing what she represents, Dr. King represented you, man. Like, and you should know that. And I think a lot of people don't know that. Like, she represents poor people. Let's keep it a buck. He represented for poor people, for poor Black people to actually attain more. And he deserves more respect than that. Like you said, she reshared it. She reshares a lot of stuff, but I think this was a learning lesson for her on the level of a platform that she has. I hope this wasn't utilized for attention on the King holiday to promote, but maybe it was. Who knows? But I would love to hear her speak a little bit more on it, and I would love a little bit more education on her end too. But again, I'm asking for education for Sexy Red, and I think there is ability to do that. I think
I,
sometimes people underestimate acts like Sexy Red. I would love to have a sit down interview with Sexy Red and do it like 2020 type style.
yeah, but I would like to have an interview with her as well. But one thing I could say is like I don't know what more she has to say about it. She said she's seen it, she reshared it, and when they called her out about it, she said she knows wrong, blah blah blah, and apologized, and it was they accepted it, and it was over from there. I don't know what more people want as an explanation from her.
Right, right, right.
She
I
did
guess
what she wanted to do.
would it be out of bounds to ask her about you know her experience with Black history? And what she learned, like you said, there's a generation that
That'll be
might
a
not.
conversation. That could be a
Huh?
cool conversation, but I don't know what people are looking for as far as answers for that from her.
Mm,
I don't know. I'll be wanting to know what people are what expectations are of artists like her. In
right.
those type of conversations. It's not saying that they're dumb or unintelligent. Because at the end of the day, you have to exaggerate a character these days, whatever. So I'm pretty sure Sexy Red as this, even though she's more as genuine that I've seen in interviews, there's still a little bit of that character and going on with that feeds it. But I mean,
Right.
I appreciate her taking accountability and apologizing for it.
Right. Because it could have went another way, and I'm glad that she took the high road, and Miss Bernice took the high road as well, and they came to an amicable, respect, if you will. But that following week, or the end of the week rather, she released a single with Bruno Mars called "Fat, Juicy, and Wet." Now, did you hear the song? What do you think about the song?
I heard it a lot over the weekend, man. She got that iHeart stimulus package. They was playing it every top of the hour, and the first thing that stood out to me was how the hell did they edit this to be able to play this on radio? Because from the verses to the hook, like it's so edited, man. It's crazy. I actually look forward to the collab, despite what some people may think, because I seen what Bruno was able to do on both records with Cardi, Finesse, and then I think the other record is called Please Me or something like that. I was on her album, but those two records were good records. So I was kind of expecting that, but this record is more so of a Sexy Red record, and Bruno's just coming into her world, and I thought it was going to be a mesh of if it was going to be a collab by them, that it was going to kind of be Bruno's world mixed with that, a little bit of that R&B pop feel, whatever. And this is basically a West Coast beat with Bruno coming into her world. You know what I'm saying? And that's really what it was. Bruno only did the hook, really, and some ad libs. He didn't have a verse. He didn't have. This is a Sexy Red song featuring Bruno with him just really doing the hook.
You think it's a hit?
You said what?
You think it's a hit?
It'll ring in the clubs.
It reminds me of WAP in that sense, where I think that the initial push is going to be very strong, but I think that, like you said, the iHeart stimulus package, once people get tired of hearing it and being forced to hear it, they're not going to go out there and play it on their own. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
Well, DJs are definitely gonna play it in the club because this is a record that you could dance to. It's kind of crazy they didn't go do this in the summer. I think that this would have had a bigger impact during the summer. But this is gonna happen where they're gonna play this in the club. Like I want to hear this in the club. To be totally honest with you, like there's not a lot of records out here that get women dancing these days. You go to the clubs now and it's trap music down. It's not really a lot of those records women dance to. So if this at least accomplishes that in the club, cool. But is this a great record? No. Is this a collab that I was looking forward to? Yes. Did it deliver what I thought it was going to be? No, but I'm not mad at it, man. I like Bruno, and I actually like Sexy Red. I'm not going to lie to you, man.
I've said that on here before. I like Sexy.
It's not saying that her music is great, but I like her. I like her personality, man. When it comes down to the approaching this, the whole character, man. I don't know. I'm not against Sexy Red, man.
Well, you say you're a Bruno Mars fan, or you just appreciate his music?
Fuck with Bruno. No, I fuck with Bruno because
I think Bruno's extremely talented. I think he's one of the more talented artists of this generation.
yeah.
But I can't help but feel like with these collabs, whether it be Sexy Red, whether it be Cardi, whether it be Anderson .Paak, it feels like he kind of utilizes certain people who are hot or creators in Anderson .Paak's sense to kind of stay around without having to make his own stuff. He hadn't put out an album in almost 10 years now. It's been 9 years since 24 Karat Magic came out, and again, I'm not saying that he needs to lean on other talents, but he's a writer, he's a producer, he's an overall entertainer. You think he has any music on the way as a solo artist, or you think he's just
I
gonna be
mean, he
collaborating?
can, but I don't like that approach for saying that, Mike, because I think that with Bruno collabing with some of these artists, it did more for those artists than it did for him. You know, he made those records hot. I remember that record with B.O.B., that Beautiful Girl record or whatever. I remember that. I remember,
That was Frank. Yeah.
yeah, that helped Bruno. I mean, that
Mhm.
helped. I mean, that helped. It helped Bruno on the stage of that, but it helped Bob more.
It
That
helped
they
both.
Bruno made that a hit, but
He
you know,
did.
like I wouldn't say that he's riding the coattails of people because he's kind of like making records hotter. And like I said before, he started doing these collabs, he left people with a good project. If anything, I felt like he found a way of keeping the feel of that kind of like core R&B-ish soul type sound as well, as far as like the producing and stuff like that within it, with that R&B sound, better than R&B artists of the last decade. Because when I hear records like Finesse or the record he did with Cardi, and then I hear the Silk Sonic stuff, it did well,
They
and
call him the Filipino Rihanna. You guys are wild one. The Filipino Rihanna. He's gonna come with an album.
Yeah, I really think that he's a talented artist and that he really enjoys having fun making these records. Like, he didn't have to do a record with Sexy Red. I mean, I think like I said, what does that do for him versus what it do for her?
All right,
Bruno
well,
got.
let me play devil's advocate here. Thumbs up in the chat, everybody. We're gonna get to some of these other topics too. I want to play devil's advocate here. If I'm Bruno Mars and I'm sitting in the studio and there's pressure of me being a big superstar, because anything that he puts out, it's got to be big. He's Bruno Mars, and he has the gift to be able to not only create massive stuff in the studio, but he brings it to the stage as well. If I'm
Mhm.
Bruno and I'm like, well, it's a lot easier for me at this time and juncture to be able to identify, who's really popping right now, and reach out to them, and like you said, make their shit hotter, excuse me, and stay out there. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, maybe it's building up to whenever he does release something, but maybe not. I mean, maybe I'm just a scorned R&B fan in the fact that we don't have Bruno putting out albums and we don't have Miguel putting out albums. And I think that they made some of the stronger, you know, pseudo pop R&B music of this era. Because when's the last time Miguel dropped?
Yeah, I mean, I said that on the prior show, but like, with Bruno, like I said, I feel like it does more for Sexy Red than it does for Bruno. He didn't have to
Of
go
course, of course.
collaborate.
But it
Yeah,
keeps him around though, because she's popping right now.
Bruno. The lovely thing about like singers, whatever, the expectation of them to drop is not the same as a rapper. So
That's true.
Bruno could have just did the Silk Sonic thing and then popped back out when he wanted to be totally honest. But like I said, this collab, I was expecting it to be a perfect mesh of both worlds, and more so it was like a Sexy Red song over a West Coast beat, and Bruno, kind of just being supplemental onto the record. It didn't really add too much more of his juice, to the record, like how it could be, like you've seen with the collabs with him and Cardi, which is a perfect mesh of both of them. Like, I don't know. I'm not mad at them doing something else later. If he could recreate it and bring her into his world, and that'll be dope too.
And that's probably going to happen. But I think what you're talking about, this song was probably a victim of song length, because I think it's like, what, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, one of those things. I think what him and Cardi were doing were more, like you said, evolved type of records where they were a little bit lengthier, where he was able to add more of what Bruno does in there. You don't have a whole lot of time for a collabo with 2 minutes and 30 seconds or whatnot. And especially the musician that Bruno is, like, that doesn't even really leave you any room for bridges.
And,
Um
I mean, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at the record. I mean, it's gonna do what it's gonna do. I'm not gonna say it's like the hottest record out here and it's shutting stuff down, but coming off of summer when all we had was Not Like Us, and we still haven't got another bop since, for real, having this out there is kind of refreshing for the nightlife. Yeah, I would say, instead of riding off old records to still kind of save it. So With Bruno just being a feature and him not really like adding some like major sauce on it, I don't think it's a big deal. It's just another Sexy Red record, you know. And Sexy Red is doing what Sexy Red do, you know. I don't think it's a big deal of a record. I mean, good single for her if she got another project coming, but I don't have expectations for Sexy Red music, you know.
Well, we have expectations for Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne announced that he's going to drop the Carter 6 this year. Do you think that Wayne has the possible bop of the summer, or is Wayne just past that time in his career?
Wayne could do whatever he want to do at this point, and he has shown that he could want to do whatever he want to do. I heard like a snippet of something, like a verse or something that they're saying is supposed to be a song from the Carter Six, but I don't know if that's some old. You know, he got tons of unreleased stuff that leaks every blue moon. That I don't even know what to believe in the Twitter streets or what the X streets now no more when I see certain things going on. But you know, like I think with all of this and coming off the Kendrick stuff and then coming off Wayne saying, you know, what he said and then going back and apologizing and then bigging up Kendrick, at this point, I hope you can come with a project that will plead your case on why you deserve to be on those things. I know people like to talk about his past works, and he has a phenomenal career, you know, phenomenal track record wise and stuff like that. Phenomenal mixtape run. You know, I remember Wayne jumping on mixtapes and making other people's songs that were hit songs his. You know,
Yeah.
his Wayne's work ethic and his features and what he did for people's features and what he did for mixtapes and whatever, it's already cemented. So you know, it's not like he doesn't deserve to be on those big stages, but you know, what have you this game is what have you done for me lately, and I want to see how, you know, you come with it now after you know, make your claim of what you say, you know.
I don't feel like Wayne, and this is me saying this. I do think there was an era where Wayne was kind of being overstated to certain degrees. But overall, man, Wayne doesn't really, at this point, I don't think he has to prove anything. I
Mhm.
think that he was robbed of that opportunity to do the halftime show in New Orleans. He was vocal about it. And I do think also that Kendrick announcing that SZA is going to be, you know, I guess co-headlining or whatever that
Smart.
is with the halftime show,
That
it's
was smart.
kind of a further slap in the face. Do you not think that Kendrick could have announced that Wayne was going to be joining him on stage?
Because he don't have to. Why? Because he's in New Orleans. They had a Super Bowl in New Orleans before. It's the same conversation we're having. I think it was smart. Him and SZA's going on tour this year. This is a preview for what this tour is going to be like. You're selling the tour, and that's one of his biggest collaborators as well. You know, we just talked about it last week about hip hop and R&B collabs, and we know that they got some collabs together. You know, I think it was very smart, and that's home team. You mean to tell me I'm gonna choose this guy over whose home team just because we're in New Orleans? Nah, man, fuck out of here. Like,
And also, you know, there's the elephant in the room and the fact that, you know, Drake is Wayne's artist. So does Wayne really want to get down with Kendrick like that anyway? But he did go out there and say the right things.
I
Um,
mean, really, Wayne's never declined as far as his rapping ability. If we want to keep it a buck, we know that thing that he was going through with Birdman or whatever that held up an album and that killed his momentum because we seen the rise of Young Thug and Rich Gang and all of stuff. And so you know, your people are music is so microwavable, and if you don't pop out and put something out that's of within something, people start writing you off as falling off. But I've seen Wayne get on these records with what's his name? We were talking about him having one of the best albums last year. I'm sorry, the thought was just in my mind from
you're
Chicago.
talking about I see his face in my head.
Yeah. It's that.
It'll
But
come to me in a second. It's
don't
just
come to
being
me.
live.
But
Live does that.
yeah, I see him collaborating with him. I seen his efforts of what he did with Two Chainz on Collie Grove. Like, this guy could still rap. We could talk about how he looks. We could talk about his performing ability when we seen him do the Hot Boys reunion or whatever. But him rapping, we know he could still get on the mic and do his thing. You know,
Corday
um,
is who we're talking about.
Corday, yeah, his oh man, the Corday, you know, features those collabs, amazing, 2 for 2 on the last album. So like,
Hmm.
Wayne, his talent wise, and I don't even think his music his status was overstated. Then that guy stated his claim. His work
Hmm.
ethic was amazing. think about how many features they used to talk about he had in a year. And there were hot features. We're talking about features.
I used to hate when people. I used to
Lloyd's
hate when
too.
people overanalyze the real G's moving silent like lasagna, and I guess I never thought that line was as dope as other people thought it was. But maybe I was being too harsh because I was thinking like, and follow me real quick, audience. I was thinking that okay, that line doesn't work because lasagna doesn't move, right? But again, maybe that's just me being too harsh because I because I equate that line to like when Jay was like on Dirt Off Your Shoulders and he was like, I can run it back because I'm straight with the rock. Like and everything fit. The whole running back, the rock, Rockefeller, straight off the block with the running back, the block being the block where he came from. All of those things work when Jay does it. And with the real G's moving silence, like lasagna was a missing piece, the fact that lasagna doesn't move. But whatever.
Man,
Yes.
like no,
LP, yes, I'm being overcritical, LP. Yeah. That was me 15
what I'm
years.
not gonna do,
I'm a lot more liberal now.
do do I think that Wayne deserved it just because it was in New Orleans? No, because we never like associated where artists is from based on performances. That was never a metric. That was never a standard. That didn't become a conversation of people seeing that Dre, Snoop, and all them did their thing in LA. But as far as like Wayne's contribution to hip hop, uh, uh he held it down for a long time, bro. Like we're talking about a guy who kept the lights on when everybody left Cash Money. He was that last one standing, and they're used to hearing the wobbly wobbly drop it like it's hot Wayne. Then you start hearing Wayne really spitting. You hear the Squad Up mixtapes. You hear him Carter 1, Carter 2, the in between mixtapes, the features. Like having a Wayne feature was like the thing then. Like it was so big to have a Wayne feature back then that it kind of granted you an automatic hit with having Wayne on your record. You know what I'm saying?
I think Wayne is underrated as a hook guy too, man, because that that's what I say you too. That as a hook guy too, because that Duffel Bag Boy hook is crazy. That Red Nation hook with the game, crazy. Crazy. And I think that Wayne can do certain things with his voice and has a certain quality with his voice that can't really be duplicated. And you're right. Wayne held it down. There would be no Cash Money existing to this day as it is right now if Wayne wouldn't have continued to go on and do what he was doing and elevate in the way that he did. It would have been an afterthought like a lot of the other labels of that time.
And
And
the branch from Wayne, you know, he
yeah,
was all right. I was on top. I did this. Now I want to introduce what I want the next generation of rappers to be. And I
yeah,
mean, we got Nicki from that. We got Drake from that. And believe it or not, people say what they want about Tiger, but Tiger has he's one of those guys that if you want a party record, Tiger should be one of the guys you should call. You
he
know what I'm
got
saying?
hit.
He got
It is.
hits. You can't take that from him. But
Yeah.
like, you know, what his contribution to hip hop, you know, man, just what he held down. And he even held that mixtape king crown for a long time too. So I mean, people say what they want, but I know the impact of what Wayne was and his contribution to why he could be mentioned in those conversations, man. Like
We got to keep it real. Wayne is the biggest rapper to ever come out of the South.
yeah,
That's just the reality. If we're talking about a solo artist, I'm trying to think of who else would have been that. I mean, it might have been Ludacris, Ti, something like that. But yeah, it's Wayne. I mean, there's nobody bigger to come out of the South as a solo
yeah,
artist.
I can never
Out,
shit on Wayne. Like when people start saying when he deserved the Super Bowl stuff, I'm like, hey, pump your brakes because we got to start seeing like coordinate that with New Orleans and stuff, and you know it's like that's cool, but we got to see what translates outside to the broader scope. I know there's a lot of culture in New Orleans and whatnot, and it'll be great, but it's just like nah, we got to get outside that bubble and think about the bigger thing when it comes to that. And I think they chose the right person, but Wayne
well,
is really
yeah, if that's what you're trying to do, right? And I think for places like New Orleans are tricky because, like you said, the Super Bowl is going to be broadcast globally, and it's going to be the most watched thing in the nation and possibly globally at that time, right? But it's taking place in New Orleans. So are you going to cater to that city? Or are you going to cater to the wide audience that this is being broadcasted to, and they made their decision.
Wide audience.
They are catering to the wide audience that this is being broadcast to. But I think what happens is when you set the scene at a place that's so culturally rich, like New Orleans, and you have somebody like Lil Wayne, who many people feel should be there and who has integrated himself in sports, and then you have the Hot Boys getting back together, you have these Cash Money reunion things, it gets people to feeling like, well, they should have made the decision for the city in a similar way that they did in Los Angeles. But Los Angeles was a collective, and it was Dr. Dre, Snoop, a host of others. Maybe if this was brought in a way where it was like New Orleans hip hop, I don't know.
Like I said, you think about the bigger thing. Like the New Orleans residents will be watching that Super Bowl just like the rest of us. I guarantee the majority of who's in attendance are not New Orleans residents. So yeah, we have to appeal to a bigger crowd because that's where that money is.
Do you think? All right, let me ask you this. I don't mean to interrupt you. Do you think this would be a different story if we talking about Carter 3 Wayne?
Carter 3 Wayne, he has a good reason to be put in that conversation, to be on that stage at that time. He was hotter than fish grease, man. You had no artist that was hotter than him at Carter 3.
Well, we'll see what Kendrick does. I don't really love the addition of SZA on it. I think that
love it.
How do you feel about SZA being added? Because we didn't speak on that.
I think it's dope. I think when they announced them, traveling and doing this tour together, I think that was dope. Just like I thought, I like seeing that hip hop and R&B collab on tours anyway. I wasn't fortunate enough to catch J and B. But I always kind of like those. I was able to catch Nas and Lauryn Hill, and I thought that was dope. Integrating those two crowds. I think it was dope. And I like SZA and K Dot, and being that they came out the same camp together, I think it was it was cool, especially if they have Doechii as the opener. That's icing on the cake.
I think R. Kelly and Jay-Z turned me against hip hop and R&B tours because are co-headliners, if you will. Because the energy of a hip hop record is just going to be so much different than the energy of an R&B record. And we're talking about somebody in R. Kelly who had, he had some R&B songs that did have hip hop elements to them, whether that be flow or production or whatever. But when Jay drops like a You Don't Know, I don't know. I think that it forces the rapper or the hip hop artist to change up their set to kind of, soften it up, kind of like how rappers do when they get on R&B records. It's like, I want the rap concert. And if I'm going to an R&B concert, I want the R&B stuff. And I don't want the R&B person to feel like they got to compete with the rap records. And I don't want the rapper to feel like they got to compete with the R&B records. You know what I mean?
I think it just depends on who the artists are. You know what I'm saying? Like because like I said, I seen Nas and Lauryn Hill.
Well, Lauren's kind of a hybrid, but I feel you. I mean, Lauren could go out there and bust some rhymes.
Essentially, what you're looking for to get out of it. I mean, I have no problem with it, man. I mean, even when you had the most gangsta artists touring, for insurance purposes, their openers would be somebody totally different. Kid and Play even toured with NWA.
True.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like
Jermaine Johnson, the super chat says, "Bling bling, drop it like it's hot, make it rain." All Lil Wayne's legendary, memorable quotables on songs that he didn't even rap on. It's a legend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Wayne deserves his state to, be one of the greats in the game. When they start talking about the Super Bowl stuff, I don't know. But overall, Wayne, he's solidified, man. And honestly, I don't know. I didn't really like his last couple albums. I didn't like the Funeral album, and I didn't like the I think there was another one before that. I wasn't really too fond of those, but the Carter albums, I don't really be disappointed, but when you know what your standard is from a Carter album, I don't know. He's solidified himself so much where I really don't have expectations for him, but coming off you now stating that claim that you should have been there and then doing this and people, and then the talk that you had when you did your festival and everybody going to bat for you. I want to see you come with it and show people why you're better than just your last work that they hold you to.
I agree with that. And if anything, I hope that this puts a fire, under Wayne, so that on this album he takes this album serious and really knocks it out the box. Because somebody like Lil Wayne, he can collaborate with anybody he wants to. He can get production from anybody he wants to. He can do a Hot Boys reunion if he wants to. He cannot do a Hot Boys reunion if he wants to. Like the world is his oyster at this point. He could go old Cash Money on a new effort. He could not. You know what I'm saying? He could get anybody to do anything. So hopefully on this album, he really takes it serious and he really gets in the lab and shows the people out there that they made a mistake. I hope he can come with some bangers too. Yeah, man. I mean, but as far as the rapping goes, Wayne is rapping at a very high level right now. And that part is really, the least of our worries right now.
Yeah. It's just about can you still produce those hits at this point? That's what I want to know. Because I think he's
able to focus. And my critique for Wayne, as far as being an all-time great, has always been that, and LP said scatterbrain. It's that his rhymes were always all over the place. I mean, I like that approach. I'm a big Redman, Method Man fan, Busta Rhymes. And when, what I'm saying, you got people who can put flows together and put words together that sound good and all of that. But I do feel like when you reach an echelon to being all-time greats, now things are going to have to be somewhat organized. What's your storytelling looking like? Like, subject matter and things of that nature. And I know we don't really expect those things from Wayne, and that's cool. But on this new effort, I would love for him to focus and double down on the things that people hold him high for.
Yeah.
Because I think he's one of those guys, his fan base is still out here. Like, he goes out there and does what he does. It's like people are going to fuck with it. It's not going to be like Snoop Dogg's Missionary album where they didn't know it came out and all that stuff. They going to know, and they going to fuck with it.
Yeah, man. We'll see what's coming from Wayne. Like I said, the only thing with Wayne, why I feel like people think is a decline, is because the lack of hits. That Where the Love Go joint with produced by Swiss. I think that was kind of like one of those ones that was a little bit overhyped, as good as it was. It wasn't a milli, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I think that's why people think the decline been there. When I hear Wayne on records where he's really rapping, yes, he is still rapping at a high level, but it's just the lack of hits. That's all.
Wayne got to get with some new guys, man, because, honestly, and I don't want to say new guys, but, and no disrespect to Swiss, but Swiss ain't going to get Wayne a hit in 2025. Like, got to tap in with the, the younger guys who are making current hits. I mean, shit. Can you imagine Wayne over a Mustard beat? Like, let's be real. Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says
he has done it before.
He has done it before. I mean, but right now, how Mustard's cooking. Yeah. Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says, "Mark my words, SWV will come out to sing the hook for the Heart Part 6, and then they're gonna perform the first verse of Week."
I could see him doing that since they sampled off that for the Heart Sits, kind of sample the lyrics from that record. And
I don't think that's gonna happen.
I actually think it is possible for it to happen. I'm not against that. I don't know about the first part of Week. We got to think about how many minutes goes into a Super Bowl performance. But I think if he is going to do the Heart Part 6, I can see him having them come out as guests.
Are we going to do our, I guess, our track list prediction now, or you guys want to do that next week when it's closer to the game?
Yeah, we can do it. We'll knock that out next week.
We'll knock that out next week. I mean, I kind of nailed it on the damn Dr. Dre and Snoop one, but this one, I don't know. I don't know. I know one thing: Not Like Us is going to get played. I know that. Kendrick's catalog is tricky because even when he did that performance on Juneteenth, like, I didn't know he was going to perform most of those records. To be honest, he kind of went for somewhat B-sides, and I liked it.
Yeah. But for him, though, because if you're a great showman, you could still rock out without having to do your hits and it still ring off the same. Like there's a lot of artists that are able to do that. I've seen Nas do it. I'm surprisingly, as big of a Jay fan is, I've never been able to see Jay live, but I've seen Nas
It was
rock out
amazing.
live. Yeah. The Nas concert was amazing. I've even seen T.I. do it. I've seen Wayne do it. I got to see Wayne at his prime when they was doing like not like father like son. I've seen so many artists being able to just reel us in with just ones that's not their biggest hits. And I've even seen X do it. I had the pleasure of being able to see X when he's healthy enough to really still give that same energy on stage. I mean, I don't know. Showmanship is a big deal.
Yeah, you're right. And Kendrick got that. And he got that in spades. Do you think, yes or no, you think he gonna do Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe?
This is the thing. I don't know. I can't predict the Kendrick set.
I don't think he is, oddly enough. I know he performed all right at when he did the Super Bowl with Dre, Snoop, Eminem, and 50. I think in this current climate, I'm gonna have to say all right to yes again. I don't
know
think
if he's gonna repeat
showed
that.
out.
I don't think he's gonna repeat that.
He might not repeat that though. You think he's got to do Humble?
Yeah, I think he's gonna do Humble. I think he's definitely gonna do Humble. But like I said, I don't know what we're gonna get. I really don't. I guess I don't, because he could throw a major curveball and do Mad City just because sonically what that sounds like and what it
think he's
to the
gonna
fans and stuff
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think.
So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think that's what kind of makes me kind of like looking forward to this, because I can't really like predict what he's gonna do. You may throw a curveball, like the way he approaches how he does his performances, it's kind of different, So I mean, he doesn't have bigger hits than a lot of artists that could be on there as far as like the hit music, but his showmanship and the way he puts into his performances and and everything, we know it's not going to be just a regular rapper, rapping on the mic in a hype man or whatever. Like, we know that he has like real showmanship in the way he goes into production of a show.
And to be real, man, I agree with that point that you've made when it comes to him and Wayne. I think that's what they chose. They chose Kendrick for the showmanship. We saw him do that, on the Juneteenth concert. So it wasn't really more so about him being the guy with all the hits. He has the ability to translate quality records from a live standpoint, where if you're not even familiar with the record, you're going to go check for it and it's going to be a great performance. So I think that's the gift that Kendrick has, and shit, he knows how to put together a show too. That Juneteenth performance was flawless.
Amazing.
It was. I did want to go. I think we can. I don't want to say skip the media conversation. I want to go back to it. I think that you mentioned Swiss Beats. I want to talk about this Timbaland AI shit, man.
Oh yeah.
Because you guys sent me a link, or you and Ron sent me a link about what T.I. not T.I. Sorry, Timbaland. He's co-signing AI from a production standpoint, and he's partnered up with a company that actually does AI production, and basically, I mean, it basically puts the beat together for you, right?
Yeah, so this company is called Sunos, if I'm pronouncing it right, Sunos. They're already them and their competitors are being sued right now for copyright infringement over this whole AI thing anyway. And from what I understand, Timbaland has a deal signed with Sunos. Like, they're in business together. And I think that happened like
Not
a couple of
speakers, Say News or something. Yeah, because I don't want it to be.
I don't think they're really. I don't know if that's the same company or not. Don't get me to saying that. I'm not sure, but I know that's the name of the company, and them and their competitor that kind of does the same stuff within AI is being sued for copyright infringement. But it's like Timbaland. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. The beats I heard that he make with AI was fire. I seen him take an artist and create different versions of that shit, and all of the versions was fire. Not gonna lie. But I stand on my stuff of saying I think this is bad for hip hop, man. It's a cheat code. It's really a major cheat code, and he's so excited for it. He's just innovative. He's Like
Have
I'm
you
like,
been
wow.
this excited 30 years ago when he was trying to come up as a new producer? Because to me, this makes it more difficult, the barrier of entry for up and coming producers and up and coming musicians.
Such a code of your work for real though, of
Yeah,
what true artistry of what you put in here to do. Because I can give you an ass beat and put it into the AI thing and turn that into being supreme. You know what I'm saying? Like we've seen the different versions of how you want that to be. I mean, you still have to have somebody manipulate it to or train it to be a certain way, but I see this as being a major cheat code, especially for a producer. When this is your art, bro, it's already been simplified enough. It went from producers really having people coming there and them themselves are playing instruments to now it went digital to
yeah.
now, you can literally hit the button and tap and that do your drums. You don't have nobody naturally playing the drums. Like it's been so simplified that now we're gonna go from simplification to damn near cheating the game of what goes into what makes this stuff great. I don't like it, man. I
The
don't.
amount of the amount of musicians and studio musicians, because I mean, our audience is probably young enough where they don't even know what the term studio musician even means. Session musicians. The keyboard took those guys out of the game. It took those jobs out of the industry for the most part, at least on a massive scale. Like when the keyboards came in the 80s and 90s and sampling and all that stuff came in, there was no more use for a bass guitarist in the studio, a drummer in the studio, unless you had a band, you know what I mean? Or a four-piece orchestra set or whatnot to actually get your strings in. Like you listen to disco records, the drum breaks, these are live drum breaks. The strings that you're hearing, they sound so lush because they're real. They're not keyboards. It's nothing. You know what I mean? It's real musicians. And the keyboard itself took all of that out of the game. And now you have something that could take even that part of it out of the game. Where's the creativity? When you
Yeah,
have a machine doing all of the creativity for you, and let's look at Timbaland's productions. Do you get Aaliyah's 1 in a Million from a computer? You know what I'm saying? Like that's something that that beat drop and the way that that cadence went, that was something that came from his mind, I would imagine, right? You don't get that. You don't get that level of creativity. I think the stale nature that music is in right now is because of the lack of up and coming, innovative, and creative musicians and producers and engineers that we just don't have coming to the forefront right now. And this doesn't help it anymore. Like this is piggybacking off of old things. Nothing new is gonna come from this new innovation, if you will.
yeah. I mean, because like taking it back to we're talking about going from live instruments to the MIDI keyboard or the drum samplers and stuff of that nature. You still have to be nice at doing that shit. You can't
Yeah,
still play and do that. I can go get me a controller and put Serato on it, but that's not going to teach me how to know how my transitions is going to be great. You could just play a playlist if you want to, and but if your transitions is ass, that's still a lot of clubs or whatever is not really looking for to people scratching them, but you still have to know how to mix and transition well. Like
right.
there's still human effort has to go into this, and when you're putting most of your effort into the system controlling the sound of whatever, it goes. You could train it, but the output is not going to be as much as your effort of what the AI is able to do. It's no different from me taking my resume and putting it and telling AI, hey, can you spruce up what I got here and make this better? And that shit gives me a pristine resume compared to what I had there.
Yeah.
When you do that now, take that and take music and you do that. You can come here with something that's kind of mediocre and you put it through AI and it makes this a fire hit that would have never been there with your own efforts. I think it's a
And
cheat
all
code.
right, let's look at it from the fan standpoint. It undermines the listener and the fan. Like, why would I be a fan of you if you didn't make this? We talk about this all the time with ghostwriters and all this stuff. We come down on cats that may potentially have ghostwriters and say that they're less of an MC and this and that. How are we going to sit here and co-sign any producer that's utilizing technology to basically make the beats for them and do the creative part for them? It's one thing that if you have a machine that's going to quantize, for the people who worked on keyboards before, where, if you do something that might be a little bit offbeat or whatever, and then you press a button, it's just going to line everything up. That's one thing. But if you have the computer actually handling the creative part of it, and they're giving you melodies, they're telling you when and where to chop up a certain sample, like, anybody could do that. And you could be replaced by your own creation. And I think that Timbaland should be careful in that sense, because a lot of the beats that he has made, you know, programming it right, a computer can do that. Maybe that's why he's the person that they approach for this. I don't know.
Well, like even with the evolution of hip hop, and then how sampling and beat chopping, all that stuff, it's always been around in the early forms of hip hop. It's literally from the break beats and stuff like that. It's always been a way of sampling. And when you get into producing, if you've ever been around a producer that samples, it's not an easy thing to do. You know what I'm saying? Sampling is not easy to do at all. So there are certain things that just not anybody could do. And most real producers really know how to play music. A lot of them do. So this takes away those efforts of that creativity. And like you said, like when you put it like that, anybody could do it. So we already seen how we could now just buy like a Pro Tools and get you a mic and a MacBook and go in your closet and create a record. And we've seen how easy it was and how the influx of artists came from you now being able to just make music from your home. What do you think is going to be when you level the playing field to where you could just have a slew of producers that just all come out here and we don't know what's real and fake or what's not because of AI? Yeah, we can get some hot shit.
It's going to start sounding similar, right? Because the AI is going to, you could tell, like, even when you're talking about email structure, if somebody put together an email that was AI made, if you've read enough emails and you've read enough AI email, I guess written emails, if you will, for lack of a better term, you can identify that. So who's to think that us as the listener, we can't sit here and identify what's real and what's not? I think and somebody was talking about sampling, right? Like, one of the beauties of sampling is the fact that certain people do it so well, and there's levels to it, right? You got certain people who do cheat codes, and this is a problem that people had with Diddy in the 90s, where they didn't feel like the sampling that Bad Boy was doing was creative. They would just take a More Money, More Problems from, Diana Ross's I'm Coming Out, not do anything to it really, just, play the beat and you basically rhyme over it. Yeah, that right there was sampling on a certain level, and that was a level that was looked down upon. But if you look at, let's just say, Q-Tip and some of the sampling that he did for Tribe, where they would go like maybe 6 minutes into a record, take a very obscure loop that from a jazz record and turn that into a hip-hop record where you didn't even hear a hip-hop record in there. That's a different level of sampling, and that's where the creative side of it comes in at, where, yeah, of course they didn't create that individual loop, but you also brought to life like a couple of bars from a musician that they never would have thought would have turned into a classic hip-hop record. And that's the beauty of what a human element can do from actually listening to a record over and over and over again and actually say, hey, I hear something here. I think one of the big examples of that is Pete Rock's When They Reminisce Over You. Like, when you hear the original of that Tom Scott record, you don't hear a hip-hop record in there. You don't. It took a brilliant hip-hop producer to be able to hear that, and not only hear that, but bring that to life. And yeah, I'm not going to just minimize sampling is like one thing. Like, there's levels to sampling. There's levels of greatness to sampling.
Yeah. Sample. You could tell a terrible sample job.
Yeah.
But
Lyrics to Go, the Minnie Riperton, Inside Your Love. Like, yeah,
you could tell a terrible one. But like when we're really talking about this whole producer thing with that, I feel like it's not only a cheat, but it's also like you're kind of like making a deal with something that could extinct the producer as we know it. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, there's money in it. And because you know why it's going to be money in it? Because a lot of these artists, if you give them a hard drive or a flash drive with beats, and it's a mix up of what was human made versus what's AI. Artists won't be able to tell the difference. They don't care. They just want to care if it's hot or not. And that's how these companies are looking at it. They could minimize costs with deals with producers, whatever, and do this shit and get somebody to train it and do that out. That's more money in their pocket, but ultimately it's going to kill the art form. And that's what I was saying when we spoke about it early on, with it being introduced with them using it for voice stuff for the artists. Like, it's gonna extinct the art and the creativity that goes into it. Like, if Tim could make one beat of this song and he's like, okay, well, I wanted to go down a darker tone and I did this, and boom, then you get that. Where's the creativity? You just given the idea of what you want it to be, and you're trained to give you that output. But it's not really your. There's something that goes into when the feeling of when an artist or when a producer is really in there creating, and it conveys through the music. You're not getting that. There's no soul through AI. It creates
exactly. There's no soul through AI.
yeah.
And how does a producer make a living? You know what I'm saying? Like, because like you said, this undercuts the up and coming producer, where it's like the artist is just going to pay AI for a beat as opposed to up and coming producer or a producer that's trying to, make his name in the game. It's just
Man.
like a studio guitarist no longer having a job because you know what? We don't need studio guitarists anymore. We're playing all this stuff on keyboards and samplers. We don't need a studio drummer anymore. We got a drum machine now.
It's gonna be crazy, man. It's like when it opens up the playing field of people doing this, just think about DJ Academics being a hit producing, like he's hit producer. Just anybody can be able to do it.
Timbaland, such a seasoned, incredible producer, is co-signing this. I think that's sad. I think it's very sad. And maybe this is his way of making money at this stage in the game and his stage of his career. But I would like to see our veteran producers empower new producers as opposed to empowering technology that's gonna make our new producers obsolete. Like, what part of the game is that?
And I think it's kind of funny that like he's excited for this. Like, you see his excitement, like he really went in there and made those beats.
Sell people on
it's like it's cool. Like, it's the coolness of that is similar to me being a kid that's not in the industry, and I done figured out a new way to come with some heat. And I'm like, yeah, but nigga, you're a real producer that have produced real hits, and you're excited about this. And I'm just like, this is not innovative. This is literally a cheat code, dog.
This is lazy. Let's call it what it is. Yeah, you're right. This ain't innovative.
Yeah,
if you feel like
you really want to be excited about something, you create that work on your own and have that same excitement.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll be doper to know that shit came from you and your real creativity, and not for some stuff you trained a computer to do, man. Like, I don't know.
Because he was people are kind of doing the boom bap thing and this and that. If I want to do like a boom bap remix, then I can just tell it to do this, and this is what comes out. And it's like, well, why don't you make that boom bap remix? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, that's why I want you to challenge yourself.
Go ahead, my bad.
I was gonna say that's why I want to see challenge yourself, to have that excitement with challenging yourself or pushing yourself to the next abilities of the hot shit you can make. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you're already a legendary producer. At that point, man, like, it feels like you just gave it up and said, I'm gonna let the computer do that. Can you imagine? And this is exactly what it is. I'm not sitting here inflating anything or whatever. Can you imagine Nas or Jay-Z just telling Chat GPT to write their new song? Come on, man. That's exactly what this is.
Chat GPT, give me a high verse.
Give me a song where I'm rapping in a story form and I'm rapping backwards, Chat GPT. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, and Timbo, you already got too much interest in this, just because of your deal. So it's also you're gonna champion this because you have pending business with them, or already established business with them. I just think this is nasty work, man. For you to be
let's talk, man. Like, let's talk about this, man. You are tripping. This is not. We expect artists, and I consider producers to be artists because they're artists. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're creatives. You expect artists to go out there and look out for other artists and make the pathway easier for other artists as opposed to making it impossible. I mean, this is easy for him because he's already established. But what does this do to the future of music And what does this do to the future players in music? Like, come on, Timbaland, you can't be that short-sighted. And we talk about selling out. I mean, until we get some more clarification on this sounds like selling
Yeah.
out for sure.
I'm never gonna champion AI being used in hip hop. I don't care if it's for the voice of artists or if it's for production. I think it kills the art form. I'm never gonna be for it. Nobody can convince me.
Mm.
Not if you care about the art. Nah, don't you
Yeah,
can't.
I mean, let's be honest. This is art, right? Like, what if you were able to get a computer to put together a piece of art on a canvas? How does that look next to what's a human made and what a human brain conceived and creatively put together? It's
Yeah,
artificial. Like, it literally is in the name, but it's artificial.
you just can't convince me that this is the way. Just because I care about feelings that music invokes. And it's just like, don't get me wrong, like, because you said we could hear AI beat and we could hear a human made beat, and we probably won't be able to tell the difference. So it can still evoke that same emotion from the consumer, but it's we know it can be a lot of dope shit that can come from it. But when I think deeper into just the art form and what goes into that, when I sit back and look at old interviews and artists and producers are talking about what went into making this, and you start to hear that type of stuff, those are dope stories that inspires the next producer to go out there and want to push the limit further. Like, I
I
just
agree.
sat and seen a recent interview, and Tim was like, he made like Godzilla sounds or something for a record, or took something that he heard from Godzilla or something, made a record. It was something, and it's just like, when you hear
Yeah.
these stories, it's like, yo, you guys were really creating stuff from a lot of things, and it was just like, now those stories are gonna be like, yeah, man, I just told Chat GPT, or I told Sonos or whatever to just do this, and I switched to that. That's not as more compelling as me watching old Ryan Leslie videos and seeing what he was doing to make the sounds and stuff like that, producing that shit was inspirational to me. Where's the inspiration with AI? I don't.
As a creative. You're right. And when I hear stuff like this from greats like Timbaland, it makes me feel like you being this okay with this makes me feel like, yo, you've had other people make your stuff before. You know what I'm saying? Like, anybody who takes pride in just making their stuff from the ground up wouldn't even consider doing this. You know what I mean? Like, you're looking for a cheat code, you're looking for help. And it's okay to get help when we're talking about producers, and we have ghost producers out here. Dr. Dre gets all kind of help, and that's fine because it's about the end product, whatever. But when you're going to machines for help, it's like what you're doing is you're ushering in something that could eliminate the position altogether. And that's not cool.
Facts. So
But
yeah, no, I'm not for. You
that's
can't.
my soapbox on that. We'll see where this goes though. But I hope that, I I agree with you that we might not be able to tell off top, but I think over time the automated system is going to sound repetitive, and it's not going to be good for music. And I hope the listener has enough um sense, if you will, to say, yeah, I'm not listening to this shit. I want to hear real music, literally, no pun intended.
Like I said, nobody will be able to tell the difference. That's the sad part,
Mm.
and they won't
Because
care.
we have a listener now who I guess um isn't that like, they're not into music to that level to be able to decipher the difference. I'm sure we would be able to.
They won't. Just like they had the little AI rapper that was whatever. Nobody knew that was an AI rapper or whatever when they first heard him. Like, they didn't know.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
people want to do the different. They wouldn't tell the difference. But what I'm saying is, like, as far as the art form, it kills it, and I don't think it should be integrated in hip hop at all. Is not what's up, man. You can't beat a computer.
Well, I mean, it's funny, man. All of the transitions that the game is going through in the digital era, like we're even seeing a transition when it comes to journalism, and what traditional journalism looked like as opposed to what it looks like in the digital era. I mean, now many of the people who were players in I guess, in the music game in the traditional era, now they're media in the digital era. You got Cam that's media now. Cam and Elliott Wilson going back and forth on something, right? And is that media driven about their spots? Like, where's
Yeah.
that coming from?
Sorry about that. Elliot, man, he had some things to say. He went on his rant and he was going on about, the media space of the traditional journalism and how Cam he doesn't see as being a real journalist and things of that nature. And Cam invited him on the show, and Treasure Stat Baby, she asked him a question about it. What was that stuff he was basically talking, and he backtracked and he apologized and big Cam up, and it was kind of funny to me
I
because
don't like when Elliot does that. And
yeah, I don't
Elliot's
like Elliot
he's
backtracks
done that on many occasions.
because it doesn't mean that Elliot is wrong, but it doesn't mean that Elliot's right. But it does mean he has a right to opinion as somebody who did do his thing in journalism. But when you frame it how you do, and you come back and do that, it definitely just goes back to you just being a hater. And I think that's what a lot of things is what's going on with these traditional journalists. When they speak about non-traditional journalists in that way, it's just hate because you see how it went from print to digital, and you are not able to conform to the new game here now or adapt to the new game now. So you just hate on the people that is doing their thing. Now I am for, and I could argue both sides because what we do is I didn't go to school for journalism. My degree is not journalism. My traditional route is not journalism at all. You know what I'm saying? But have I done great interviews with people that I think that can hang in a game with established media personalities that has that background? Yeah. Let's think about it. I'm not the biggest fan of Charlemagne and what he's doing now, but this guy is rose to the occasion of being one of the greatest, of this time R&B radio personalities, but he didn't go to journalism school.
He
We've seen
just went
people.
into the fire. Like he went
It's
straight
like
into
sometimes
radio.
teacher is experience. Sometimes you have to do this. Like I didn't go to school to learn how to write this stuff. I didn't, and it doesn't minimize print magazine because I remember what it was like to get a double XL magazine or a Source magazines and read that and make them words like it. That was really what we got our sum up. Like, let's talk about how the mic system worked for the Source and how big that was, or
Yeah.
even magazine
Elliot
covers.
was a big part of that.
It helps sell the music, so it's not minimizing. And I want to give a shout out to those journalists and those traditional journalists because you guys made me love hip hop too. Because I read those magazines and I went and go listen to the music and it matched what some of these reviews were. And some of them they went against it. I didn't, but I could understand the viewpoints and when they came about it and the way that they captured hip hop and the way they talked about it was so amazing that it made me want to get into the game for that. You know what I'm saying? Like I love radio, and I always say Angie Martinez is my favorite radio host or media personality because I feel like she has a way of interviewing people with not trying to get moments or try to get clout things, but she still gets all the answers of what people want to know.
Yeah.
Like it or not. People will say, well, like Big Boy is a friendly radio personality. I'm like, hey, there's still an art in that because it means it makes artists comfortable enough to want to talk about anything with you. So I give it up to Big Boy. I give it up to Sway. But those print, but those print journalists are kind of like the unsung heroes in a sense because we don't really remember a lot of their nams.
Yeah, and we didn't see their faces, and I'm sure they feel a way about that because again, it was misinfo. Shout out to her under another name. I forgot what name it was, but she's the one that wrote the article for Illmatic and getting its 5 mics. But a lot of people don't get that level of credit. Those people who wrote those reviews for the Source back in the day, they inspired us. I mean, I did go into a journalism program at Georgia State, and hip hop had a lot to do with that. I interned in radio and did those things. So I do see where he's coming from. Elliot is coming from that standpoint. But see, the other side of it is, like you said, experience in this game is the biggest teacher and the best teacher. I know I felt personally, and it's around the time where the industry is in flux. Things are moving into more of a digital landscape. We got spam all over here today. I guess getting real heavy. But things start moving into more of a digital landscape. So I felt like I was learning more at my internship at Radio One than I was learning at school. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of my time and efforts were spent more so over there because I was learning the game a lot more, in radio. Saying all that to say, Cam and these guys and Joe Budden and these guys, man, they experienced being an artist on these labels, going to studios, working with other artists, touring. Who has more of an experience on hip hop than them? They're very qualified to be journalists. That's like saying that Shannon Sharp as a Hall of Famer is not qualified to sit here and talk football with you because you went to school or something. Like, come on, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like these guys I think where a lot of the traditional journalists feel away about is the fact that in your heart to some degree, these guys are actually more qualified journalists about this topic than you are.
But I could also get a lot of it, just playing devil's advocate. I can understand a lot of it because not every hip hop figure are great journalists. And I think there's a difference between podcasting and interviewing. With podcasting, we can create a topic and we could just come with our viewpoints on that and we could just talk about it to whatever angle you want to take. I think when it comes into interviewing and doing your due diligence as a journalist, there's a certain amount of research, a certain amount of journalistic integrity, a certain amount of knowing how to guide your interviews and certain etiquette that's taken with that you don't see coming from those other figures that hop into the journalism field.
I'm glad you mentioned Charlemagne. We saw Charlemagne grow as a journalist. Like I remember watching The Breakfast Club right when they formulated, and he was more of the shock jock. He was like, he would, kind of antagonize their guests. And when I saw him start to develop into a journalist who was able to do interviews, like I think that Kanye interview he did was great. The one where it was right before Kanye went to TMZ and went crazy. I thought that interview was excellent. The LL Cool J interview is excellent. Like Charlemagne has formulated and formed into a very, very good journalist. And, for his era, a great journalist, straight up. And he knows how to interview people and, like you said, not get the gotcha moments. And it's funny because he used to be all about that on his show or on The Breakfast Club. But when he does interviews, it doesn't feel like he goes for those moments. And he's the person that can get those.
It depends the platform, though, because I got to push back on Charlemagne a little bit because I don't think he's the greatest interviewer. Out of a lot of media figures right now, I think it's easier when he has a direct relationship with some of these people to where he's able to have those conversations as opposed to people he doesn't favor the most. And, one of my biggest criticisms and one of the biggest things that I like from him, which I've seen him do off and on, is when it's certain people, I feel like he kind of challenges and whatever their answer or whatever because he has a point he wants to get across or appeal to. But when it's certain people he doesn't really grab that out of them. He just kind of let them flow and kind of carry whatever of pacifying it. And I think as you having journalistic integrity, you shouldn't be afraid to guide the conversation. You shouldn't be afraid to fact check someone. You shouldn't be afraid to hold somebody accountable. I just seen it happen with Don Lemon and Elon Musk. And I know this is totally hip hop unrelated, but as a journalist, when somebody says something and you're guiding that conversation, you're like, well, so-and-so, and you don't be afraid to push back. I think there's responsibility when it comes to that with interviewing. Now if we're potting all day, hey, we're potting. We just getting our shit off. But when it comes down to interviews, I feel it's a journalist's responsibility to do their research and to make sure they're guiding conversations to be the way that they are. Because when you're a journalist, everybody has their different styles, but you are the guider of your interview. Some people, even myself, I've let artists get their shit off and talk, but you're not going to take over this interview because I'm interviewing you. I'm guiding this.
Back to what the point is. Do you remember the Ed Gordon and Tupac interview? And
Classic.
I know when Pac would say certain things, and hip hop was always on, the hot seat when it came to, violence and, disrespect to women and things of that nature. Got more spam. Man, where
Yeah,
is this
we
coming
must
from?
be cooking, man. 'Cause,
Right. But
it always
right.
happens when we cook here, huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
Little
But yeah,
surprise.
so what he would do to bring things back around, it's like Pac would say something, and his rebuttal would be like, "Well, critics might say yada yada yada." You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm not really opposing what you're saying, but this is the narrative out there, and this is what it's kind of like a devil's advocate without saying devil's advocate. And I love that. I watch that interview all the time. I think that Ed Gordon came across as, very professional in that interview where Pac was able to, still be himself, but it was a very directed interview. And I think when you have superstars like Pac and, they get to, for the most part, they run the interview. And like you said, the interviewer has to be able to reel that in and really have a purpose for the interview, because the artist could easily take over the interview and, it's no longer your interview anymore. Mad Max in the super chat says, to be fair, Shannon Sharp may know football, but he don't know basketball. And his LL Cool J interview was trash. LL looked annoyed. LL also looked annoyed on the Joe Budden interview. When does LL
Yeah.
not look
I mean,
annoyed?
I'm gonna be honest. I mean, to Matt's point, like, just because you have been in this field before doesn't mean that, as an artist, doesn't mean you're best at interviews. I like my interviewers to be unbiased, because
Right.
you don't have a dog in a fight. There's no propaganda to you helping with sales, whatever. You're here to get the best story and the best moment of them. Artists had to come to you to sell that stuff to them, not you going along, you pacifying it to, I like people that held the artists accountable and had these interviews. That's why I said I love the way, think about it. There are certain times that you could be an interviewer and you let people flow and you can ask those questions. It just reminds me of the interview that Pac had, the Vibe interview, and it was in the couch on the place he had, and she just let him go, and that's gold. You know what I'm saying?
There's
That's
times when you need to do that too. You got to read the room, and that's what a great interview is
times
to
to
do.
do that.
Matt Max in the super chat says Joe Budden knows business, but he don't know hip hop. And every time I see his podcast, I could tell that he don't know the full story of hip hop. He just knows the business. So I feel Elliot. Most of these guys, I feel Elliot. Most of these guys aren't good. Well,
Yeah.
see, this is my thing. And Elliot is more than qualified to say that. Elliot started Ego Tripping magazine. He was at the Source, and it was at his height. And when he left there, he went to XXL, and they were at the highest level that they were at. I just wish Elliot would stand on the things that he's saying. He could have gotten there and said what he said and had the points of why he said that, because he feels that way for a reason. And if there's a time where hip hop artists who are now journalists need to step their journalism game up, he's the guy to tell you that. You know what I'm saying? And he has the resume to be able to say that. And he's not just talking shit. Like when Nas went out there and told Nori and Cam and all these guys to step their rap game up. Like, he's Nas. He just made Stillmatic. He can say that. You know what I'm saying? And I just wish Elliot would just stand on what he was saying and not get up there and be like, apologize and, you know what I'm saying, say it wasn't like that. Like, if
But
you feel like the journalism space needs to be better, then go for it. Say that.
you also have to deliver as well, because one thing that I guess a lot of traditional journalists doesn't get is the polarism. Like, we're familiar with faces like Joe Budden or a lot of these people that have stepped into that media space. And there's a lot of things that those artists are willing to do or say that a traditional journalist won't do because of that journalistic integrity. So when we're talking about people that have transitioned to this new form of media, not a lot of people have been able to do it, not only from the print magazine way, but only just, let's just talk about radio. A lot of radio hosts wasn't able to transition to this new stuff either, but there are a lot of legendary people that did. We still got Big Boy doing his thing. We still got Sway doing his thing. Angie Martinez had her thing going on Power. I don't know if she's still there or not, but she's still in the media space at some time. Kim Asario, she's in podcasting, but she's still Kim Asario's in television and stuff now as far as
Yeah.
producing. So there's some people that I was able to transition into this space, and there's some people that couldn't get to it, and some of those people became the disgruntled haters. I think
Yeah.
both of them serve the purpose. I love the original print magazines. I love reading those articles and those reviews, and sometimes whatever artist is being covered. I'm just thinking about reading that magazine when 50 came with Get Rich or Die Trying, and then you have them on the cover of Double XL, or I remember reading articles of just even the freshman covers, with Double XL and how they covered the new artists, down all the way to the Double XL eye candy, which I faithfully cut out and put on my walls around the room. But it's just like it was something that I got out of magazine. Now we're in this new generation. It's just either you transition or you don't, man. Unfortunately, the print or the writing of articles and stuff is not as valued today as it once was, because now people are looking for things that you'll find in the blog era. They're not really looking for an article to really do what print magazines would do, translate into digital. They're looking for the gossip. And that's why things like Media Takeout was able to crawl for Shade Room to be able to walk now. And
No,
things
for real. Media Takeout is a
yeah.
pioneer. It inspired me too. I mean, and you know what? When I think back into the Media Takeout days, it inspired me in a sense where I saw how much attention that a website was able to draw just off of a picture. They wouldn't write any articles, you know what I'm saying? And it was like I felt that something new was coming. And to your point though, every writer is not going to translate into a personality. And you could be an incredible writer and not translate as a personality, and you could be an incredible personality and not translate as a writer, and that's okay,
or interviewer or
And
interviewer.
exactly, or an interviewer. And I think what's happening in today's time is everybody is forced to wear a bunch of hats that they weren't forced to wear before. When you have I mean, artists are just gonna move anybody out of the way. Like you could be a rapper that went platinum and you want to do a movie role, they'll have a movie role written out for you, and you could be a seasoned actor out there. You're not gonna get that role over the rapper that's never acted a day in his life. It is what it is. And if we're talking about in this media space, yeah, if Cam and Mace want to do a sports show, they're gonna get I mean, they did it on their own and people are gonna watch. It just is what it is.
Yeah,
Now,
now you have to be entertaining.
exactly. And if you want to, as a veteran in the journalism field, find ways to help out those individuals continue to polish up on their skills, do that. You can do that. But I think that the competitiveness of it all makes, somebody who's a legend in his own right. I don't want to say in his own right, he's a legend. Like Elliott Wilson is more of a background person, feel like he's in competition with artists who are well known that are stepping in his space. It's not an even matchup. These guys are just popular. They're entertaining. They know how to work an audience. They could be talking about whatever. That's why, like, even when we talk about Shannon Sharp, like Shannon Sharp is he's an entertainer as well. People want to hear Shannon Sharp stories because he's Shannon Sharp. It's different than if there was some sports writer that people aren't that familiar with starting a podcast. People don't want to hear his stories as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the artists stepping into that space, they're now able to dictate their own narratives. And a lot of those early interviewers and stuff like that, and those writers, they have to understand, you have to remember some of the things that you wrote about too. So
Exactly.
if you have a history of things being disparaging a certain artist, you think they now, because the ship has sailed, that they don't they forgot it or is whatever. Like, no, there will be more help to go sit down with another artist that knows what it's like being an artist. Like I said, like there was a lot of artists that had platforms or podcasts, whatever, that came and went. And there are some that just been here longer than others. Were some good? No. Were some entertaining? Yes. It's not all great work from these people. Like I look at like Young Miami, right? And her show Carisha Please. Is she doing the best at interviewing? No. Is she asking the questions that people want to know concerning those artists or whatever? Yeah. She was given a platform. She's by far not the best at what she does. I look at Drink Champs. Nori's not the best interviewer, but I love Drink Champs because artists are coming there and they're speaking to another artist and they're speaking freely, and we're getting stories from this individual that we probably wouldn't get out of your traditional interview because they probably won't be comfortable enough to do it because the environment or whatnot is a little bit more artist friendly over there. So it's like it doesn't make them the best interviewers, but it's entertaining and we're getting the stories. And I think that's what conveys and what matters to people now, more so really making it such a serious sit down one on one. You know, it's evolved so much further than that. You know,
I remember it was a Pro Bowl, and this was when Marshawn Lynch wasn't talking to the media. He was just, doing whatever he wanted to do. He was just staying to himself, and he wouldn't talk to anybody. And Dion Prime was, he was part of the interviewing panel or whatever. He's like, I'm gonna walk over there. He walked over there, and Marshawn like, Prime, and they had a whole conversation. And that's what it is. The artists feel comfortable with people who have gone through what they've gone through as artists. Other than there was a love-hate relationship with journalists back in the day and artists. I remember Method Man being a big proponent of that because the journalists were very hard on Method Man and his career and the albums that he put out. And, fuck a rap critic. They talk about it while I live it. It's real. Like, that's how they felt. They felt like, okay, well, we really out here living this. We really out here doing this, and you sitting here writing about it. And I think there was that dynamic too when some of these artists didn't get a favorable review or acknowledgement in some of these publications. And like you said, these relationships stand over time. Like Tupac didn't fuck with Torre. And I'm sure people who fuck with Pac heavy know that and probably don't fuck with Torre either. Like, those things translate.
Yeah, another thing is we can't sit here and act like publications didn't take certain sides too with initiating certain things. Like the whole East Coast West Coast thing was like kind of blown up due to the media and these magazines.
It was media driven. They created that title. They created the narrative. They created the cover of the magazine. They did that.
Yeah, so it was just like we're not going to act like you guys can play a role now. Let's not act like that mic system didn't start becoming compromised with certain people who wanted other people to be in there. Like there's certain moments in which that journalism space have hurt hip hop and turned things bigger than what it was because of excerpts or something that was taken out just to sell your magazines. So those artists don't forget that. The artists don't forget
and
that.
They've never atoned for that East Coast West Coast thing either. Vibe has never atoned for that.
No, man. And then when I'm looking at it, like I say, for example, when I had my sit down with Dave Mays, right? It's kind of interesting how Dave is talking about like kind of like the downfall of Source. And he was like, look, I took all this money and I put it into going digital. And it failed, because it was kind of before their time. And now look where we're at now.
Yeah.
And Dave, he has his Breakbeat Media, which is podcasting. He had Don't Call Me White Girl on there, and he had what's the name on there originally? Funny Marco. Something happened with that. But he's now still figuring out a way of how to adjust to it while you have certain people that have, rather than accept the new space where media is in and find a way how to, get into it, is just like now some people have unfortunately became haters. And but I get some of it. Like I said, I feel like there's a responsibility that you have with being an interviewer and being somebody who's is conducting these interviews and doing their research and the journalistic integrity. But also, like I said, some people just want to be entertained, man.
I like what Dave Mays is doing with the Suge Knight podcast too. I think that's really dope. It was something else I wanted to say, but we got to move on to the next thing because I know we got a couple more things. ASAP Rocky, you kind of alluded to this last week. I feel like you might have broke some news because I didn't get the news that he didn't take the plea deal till like the next day.
Man,
ASAP Rocky's facing 24 years, and the plea deal was what, for 180 days, and it was going to be what, 3 years of probation or something like that. Okay. What do you think is going to happen in this trial? I guess we'll just skip over into that part.
I don't know, man. for me and what's being presented right now, it don't look so good. I know they were going through the jury selection. I know his lawyer spoke out about that um as far as the jury appears, and you see is majority white, and that's always a conversation. Even when I'm talking about just regular crimes going on and trials is going on, they're talking about jury appears. Well, those ain't my peers. What I normally see. I always thought the jury selection process was crazy. There are some jurors that got dismissed. One because when they asked her background or whatever, she said she was a viral content creator. You ask another one, how do you know of Rihanna? Of course, she was on Super Bowl. It's kind of damn hard to try to get a juror that
You
doesn't
gotta
know
say you don't know who Rihanna
about
is
this.
to get on the to get in the jury.
Yeah, it's really hard as to have jurors that don't know about high profile cases no more because you have the internet. You have unless you completely living under a rock, you're never gonna know. You're never gonna be so detached to certain things that go on with high profile cases like such. But
How they
um,
gonna pick Diddy's jury?
yeah,
Jesus.
exactly. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, I just don't understand how to go. Maybe you guys should use AI for that. Yeah.
Diddy
but
don't want that AI jury. Man.
but no, I digress. But like all jokes aside, like I don't know how this looks. You have them on video. You clearly see that this is supposed to be this gun allegedly that was probably used in this crime, and they have the ballistic report, and then you have the lawyer that's basically saying that that's a prop gun and he uses it for protection. I don't know how that defense is going to hold up when you not only have the video, but you have the person that's still alive to testify against you that's saying you shot me. It's kind of like seeing this Tory and Meg thing, sort of, when I don't know too many people who won a case against a shooting case against somebody that's right there testifying, saying that they shot me.
And then there's a video corroborating that there is a weapon there, and then you have ballistics
I
that
don't.
okay, we don't know. Okay.
I just don't know.
I'm sitting here just trying to think of
Oh,
why he
yeah,
wouldn't take
yeah.
that plea deal, and I'm thinking like maybe he just didn't do this. I don't know. I
I
don't know.
mean, I'm always for it. If you really didn't do it, maintain your innocence. I don't give
Yeah.
a damn. But like I don't know how this is gonna go, man. I don't know what the truth is. That's the thing. But looking at what is coming out right now and what we've seen, and far as whatever they said that defense was on that, I'm just like, this is a tough one because that deal actually wasn't bad, man. Like that deal wasn't bad. 180
Didn't
days.
sound bad to me. In the way that he responded to the deal, or his legal representation responded to the deal, said no. He said it would ruin his career or something like that. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
endorsements, skill endorsements and stuff like that. I'm kind of like,
yeah,
man,
I guess
I
yeah,
don't know.
because you would have to have an admission of guilt, right? And so
Yeah,
yeah, they're going in for the not guilty plea, and he has to have some. Maybe I'm just thinking maybe he just didn't do it. I don't know. I
yeah.
don't know.
And then on top of that, I feel like I need more ins and outs about this case. I'm not. I know we see the story of what was told by
Right.
ASAP Rocky and stuff like that, but I'm not really. It's still something to this that I feel like there's a lot that hasn't been mentioned from what I've been seeing,
I
but it's really like from so far it's not looking good. That deal versus facing 24 years. I mean, you guys better have a great defense that's against this because right now is from what I've been released publicly so far, it doesn't look good in my opinion.
Mad Max says, I'm gonna find a way to get on that jury. They're not gonna let you on there, Mad Max. You're biased. You're a ASAP Rocky fan. They're not even letting Rihanna fans on there. I was reading something where I think they asked um, one of the potential jurors, they were like, well, if Rihanna's sitting in the courtroom and his family's over there, would you be able to give a guilty plea with Rihanna sitting in the front row? Like, what kind of question is that? Like, you
Yeah,
don't want to disappoint Rihanna? Like,
I I don't know, man, but like just the downfall of the ASAP crew is kind of sad too, man. I hate to see
yeah,
it come down to where it's come down to. It's just like I don't know, man. It just
it
sucks.
is sad, man. That was a movement, man. Rest in
Oh
peace,
yeah,
Yams, man. Like,
X. Honestly,
yeah,
it feels like since Yams died, it never been the same amongst that crew too. You know what I'm
no,
saying? To be honest with you, like nothing never came out after that, like with them as a collective and whatnot. it sucks, man. But yeah, that's what I have according to that. It ain't too much further developments besides them and Al Sharpton stepping in and saying a piece about the jury and things like that. So we'll see what happens from it. But from what's been presented so far, I don't know. I don't know how this is gonna look or how this is gonna go. Dead ass. I
Well,
don't know.
Well, hopefully, I mean, look, I don't know what to say other than hopefully justice is served because it seems like with him standing on a not guilty plea and rejecting this plea deal, maybe he didn't do it. And like you said, I agree with you. I think that there's possibly a lot of details that we just don't know about that aren't being publicized that have to be out there because on its face, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't. Well, Jeezy's Trap or Die turns 20 years old. Or at least it turned 20 years old, I think, yesterday, man.
Which is fucking
Um,
crazy, man. Come on,
it's
man.
crazy, man. Time is
It's,
flying by.
I'm not old, and that makes me feel old. And like that's crazy.
That mixtape changed a lot, man. And I love that formula. And I spoke about this on my Get Rich or Die Trying video where that 50 Cent mixtape prepped people for Get Rich or Die Trying. And it showed the industry that you could hit the game hard with a mixtape and then get people ready for your debut album. And that
Yeah.
is what Jeezy was able to do with Trap or Die and then, drop Thug Motivation 101. Like that Trap or Die era of Jeezy, like I don't think I've ever seen anybody have the city of Atlanta on lock like that. That includes Ludacris, T.I., Outkast and Goody Mob's like a slightly different thing. That's kind of a different era. I say the closest thing to that is with that Pastor Troy movement in like 99 to 2000. But that Jeezy thing extended Atlanta and was all over the whole South. I'm sure y'all felt it down there in Florida. West
Yeah.
Coast was fucking with Jeezy. The East Coast was fucking with Jeezy. And he just came with a style that was unique to a lot of people. Now, I've been vocal thinking that, not thinking, I've said that he kind of took Pastor Troy's style from the Timbaland song, Are We Cutting? But he was able to make a career out of that and able to, create a movement out of that. And you had BMF going on at the time. It was a time, man. And I don't know, man. The mixtape, it made me start thinking about the mixtape game. And we was talking in our chat. And it
Mhm.
makes me think, man, like, fuck an album, man. Will we ever see impactful mixtapes again?
Well, I think like the mixtape era died when streaming came. I mean, we literally had KP talking about that with on the Dat Piff interview he did with No Jumper, and he's talking about how the streaming stuff kind of undercut what they were doing there at Dat Piff. And so when streaming came in, you see like Dat Piff and my mixtapes kind of just still try to hold on, but when you have stuff that's being released solely through these platforms, and now they're now allowing their mixtapes to be released on these platforms. It kind of killed those mixtape hosting sites. And
Yeah.
another thing that contributed to the death of the mixtape is when mixtapes start sounding like albums, and when now it drives out your utilizing a DJ.
Yeah.
So we
That
got
was
the
always confusing to me too. It's like, okay, well, what is considered a mixtape and what is considered an album? Because in my mindset, and I get it, it's the labels, whatever the label deems, whatever is, an album and a mixtape. But to me, if you're dropping original music, it's an album. I
yeah.
mean, there's no other way to really, you
So
know.
for example, Dolce, the alligator bites, never heal or whatever. I forgot what the name was. I don't want to fuck it up, but
Yeah,
that's
that's
considered a mixtape. She could say on the Breakfast Club. She said that's a mixtape.
why. Like,
It's
I
not
would love to ask
anymore.
her
She's
why. What
performing at
makes it a
conventions.
mixtape?
I feel like when people say things are mixtapes now, or the labels, whatever, I think, or artists saying it's a mixtape, this is them just testing the waters, really, which is similar to how mixtapes was done back then. But like you said, this is original material. This is album, man. It counts as an album. They're viewing it, and you get accolades as if there's an album you being nominated up there with the albums. That's an album to me.
It's original music. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, you got to be able to define what makes something something, right? You got to be able to define what makes this a compact disc and what makes this a vinyl record, right? And you should be able to, give the significant differences, what makes one thing the other. You can't do that with these definitions of mixtapes and albums. It's the same thing. What
Yeah,
makes it a mixtape and an album? Just because you said it's a mixtape, for me, it feels like artists have the luxury now to put together a piece of work and throw the label mixtape on it, so it alleviates the pressure of having to deal with the pressures of what an
exactly.
album would be. If people fuck with it, it was just mixed. I mean, if people fuck with it, well, great mixtape. If people don't fuck with it, they're like, well, it was just a mixtape. I just threw it out there. Like,
Mhm.
nah, we got to be able to define that. And for me, it undermines people like Big Crit, who have a great mixtape catalog, don't really have the same, heraldic catalog of albums, but these mixtapes aren't considered with the rest of the albums. I've literally seen in my time in journalism, seen Section 80 get reclassified from mixtape status to now they consider it an album.
Yep, I'm
And
with you on
nothing
that.
changed.
That happens too.
Yeah, nothing changed.
Mhm.
It's the same thing as the Doche thing. It's like when it first came out, it was like it's a mixtape, so that they could prep people for the debut of Good Kid, Mad City. But after we've gotten to the point of Damn, it's like, okay, well, Section 80 was an album too. And they're probably gonna do the same thing with Doche. They're gonna be like, after she's done with her debut and her debut does what it does, she's a couple albums in, they're gonna go back with this effort and say it was an album too, which it is.
Yeah, like when we start, let me, and don't get me wrong, like, but I want to be honest with you. When mixtapes start sounding like albums and the use of a DJ is through it, and then like I said, what streaming did, it just all in one killed mixtapes. I mean, the projects were good because I'm not gonna sit and act like I didn't like Fabulous Soul tapes,
Yeah.
or Drake's
Those
early
are albums, man.
or those are albums to me though.
Yeah.
As opposed to There's No Competition and Funeral Music, which is DJ Drama. You know what I'm saying? Those are what I consider mixtapes. Currency is one of those guys where his stuff
Yep.
sounded like real albums. Wiz, his stuff sounded like real albums. Like these were guys that kind of took the definition of a mixtape and restructured it in what it's gonna be. Like Dom Kennedy stuff, these are things that start sounding like original albums and original music and original production. And the mixtapes, I don't know, the mixtape, anybody calling stuff a mixtape now is kind of funny and laughable to me now, because since coming off what we're talking about here 20 years later, Trap or Die, which this was an introduction to the world on Jeezy for the most part, and it prepped us for what the album was going to be, and it delivered, kind of capitalizing off the success of this mixtape. And back then, a mixtape is kind of held you over and preps you for what's about to come, like those in between dedication mixtapes going into Wayne's albums or things like that. Like a mixtape now is just like, I feel like singles now are like the new mixtape. Like artists just throw singles out there. It's not attached to a project, and if it works, it works. If it don't, back to the drawing board. That's the new mixtape to me now.
Like,
But
I remember when T.I. dropped Down with the King or whatever. Like, we knew Urban, and he was saying it on the mixtape, like Urban Legend on the way. You only got like maybe one or two verses from You Don't Know Me. But other than that, it was him rhyming over 99 Problems, where he was going to flip. He was rhyming over Welcome Back, the bass joint. And, and that's, to me, and I hate to sound like a traditionalist or whatever, but to me, that's what a mixtape is. Like, when you're rhyming over somebody else's work, and this is some stuff that, get people warmed up for the project, you might hit people with a couple of snippets from the stuff that's coming on the upcoming album, and you're remixing some of other people's, previous works, like 50 did, like Wayne did. And I only say that because when you do it that way, you could differentiate what a mixtape is from what an album is. If you're making all original music, how do you define why this is a mixtape and why this is an album? You can't.
Yeah, so like
You can't.
you start missing those elements of mixtape, and now have to say there's no such thing as mixtape no more. That's extinct.
Mixtapes are dead. Let's just call it what it is. Mixtapes are dead. Man,
Even if
oh, go ahead.
no, you can get to super chat.
Mad Max says a mixtape is you doing demos over other songs. Yeah, pretty much.
So like when we're talking about the actual physical elements of a mixtape being thrown away, first of all, the original music they have original music now. Then you totally delete the DJ out of this equation. How is this a mixtape? How is
What
this?
was J.
Yep,
Cole's I
back
might
on.
delete this later? Was that an album or a mixtape? It's an
I
album
consider
to
it
me.
an album.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
that's how I figure. I look at it as being an album. You know, like that's what I'm saying. The actual definition of a mixtape from the elements of it, it doesn't exist no more.
It
You know,
doesn't. We need to
mixtape
really
era,
just
I
remove
love the
mixtape
mixtape
from
era.
our we need to remove mixtape from our vocabulary at this
Yeah,
point.
you know, it's kind of funny because we have mainstream artists that had a great track record of mixtapes, but there's a lot of mixtape rappers that was not able to transition to mainstream.
Yeah.
There's some great mixtape rappers that was not able to transition to mainstream, but there's a lot of great mainstream artists that were able to deliver great mixtapes.
Because I think in that era where it was mixtape, and I feel like Get Rich or Die Trying created this whole notion where the mixtape was going to get your audience ready for your big album. I think for a lot of them, the mixtape was really the album that the artist wanted to make. And then when they made their debut album or the album, it was what the label wanted, right? Like I think Crit again is another one of those. I feel like Live from the Underground sounded like a Def Jam effort where people actually gravitated towards him based on him doing what he did on those mixtapes. They
Yeah,
could
I
have
mean,
packaged some of those mixtapes and made a whole album, and I think it would have done much better than what his debut did.
yeah, and then there's a lot of exclusives that you got off mixtapes that end up further making on the albums too. You know,
Yeah.
or verses. You know, I remember some of those G Unit joints. Some of those verses on mixtapes actually made it on real songs on albums.
Yeah.
You know that was such a beloved era in hip hop, man. I remember getting on that Piff or getting on my mixtapes and searching through those and seeing who's dropping or waiting around Christmas for the soul tape. Even though that wasn't like original music, it's just the mixtape era was live and full when I was in hip hop. I remember Wale's mixtapes. I remember, and that's like the newer mixtape stuff because those are still original songs. But
Hmm.
the
Same thing with Leroy brought up this in our chat, man. That Saha the Prince, that Black History project. That project was great. That mixtape was great. That should have been his debut album. It's no reason why that shouldn't have been an album. And I hate to see that. I hate to see artists actually put in the level of work to put together a full effort, and then it gets undermined and called a mixtape. You know what I'm saying? Like that diminishes the work, regardless of what people want to say. The soul tapes
mixtapes.
are diminished by them being considered to be mixtapes. If those were considered to be fab albums, I think that his legacy would have got bumped up more than it already is.
I agree. If we consider the soul tapes albums and stuff like yes, it would have did more for his discography as far as his album output. I agree because
Yeah,
those were great projects. Those were great
it was.
projects. But luckily for Fab, he does have real actual mixtapes of him rhyming over other people's beats. You know, I can't
Right.
forget the funeral mixtapes. There's no competition, things of that, and even the early Clue tapes. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You know, Fab, he does, he was able to juggle within both in his time of doing it. So there's a lot of great mixtapes. It was just such an era, man. And now you have things that are dead like that Piff and stuff like that. Now we can't really revisit that stuff like that. But I know a lot of DSPs are now allowing mixtapes to now be on those platforms. I think like Summer Wayne's mixtape catalog is now on, DSPs and stuff like that. But there's no era like that, man. Those mixtapes and those DJ dramas and those the Gangsta Grills mixtapes. And I even remember down here in Jacksonville, you have a lot of artists that blew off mixtapes due to bigger ranking, Plies and stuff like that. I know even bigger ranking, I think he was kind of behind a lot of early Jeezy stuff too, but
Mm.
he's by the way out of Jacksonville, but he had the time up there of being in Atlanta, So there's a
So,
lot of
who is this now? I'm sorry, I'm not even
is
familiar.
it bigger ranking? He's
Mm-hmm.
like a legend in Jacksonville, but he was like instrumental behind like a lot of people like Plies kind of getting started in that. He does the what is it? Damn.
The distribution, or is he
No,
like?
nah, man. He actually did mixtapes. He did
Oh, okay,
mixtapes, man.
he was
And I'm,
DJ.
I'm gonna
Okay,
bring it up because I want to big up Bigger Rankin for what he contributed coming out of Jacksonville in the mixtape game. So um yeah, but he had a mixtape series that he did too.
okay, okay. Yeah, I mean those things are important. I think when we're ranking people all time and their catalog and everything they did in the game, we got to consider mixtapes as well. But as far as like moving forward, I mean, regardless if an artist wants to call something a mixtape or album and all that, I would love for an artist to explain, why a piece of original music is a mixtape and not an album. If we can't do that, everything's an album. You know what I'm saying? And I,
Yep,
I guess,
yep.
however they work it out, where it doesn't work against their record label contract, I don't know. Maybe there is a way. I don't know.
But Bigger Rankin, that's what he had. He had the Real Nigga Radio, the R and
Okay.
R mixtapes. But if he was to Google Bigger Rankin, he has a shitload of mixtapes that he's behind and stuff like that. But he's out of Jacksonville.
Okay.
Cool Running DJs and stuff like that. But yeah, like there was a lot of the mixtape game is I don't know, man. Is it like I said, mixtapes is dead now, but such an era it was, and things like Trap or Die or those early mixtapes for a lot of those artists, it was kind of like the precursor to great albums. I remember Can't Ban the Snowman. I remember literally going to high school and they were telling us if you wear a Snowman T-shirt, you'll be suspended or whatever, and kids were still going with the Snowman T-shirts. I remember that. I still got pictures of me in my long Tourette's T-shirt, tall tees and shit that I used to get 2 for $20 out of Foot Locker. Like I remember those times. Those were the times, man. In that mixtape era, we'll never be able to get that back again. I feel like the newer generation of the mixtapes when they start sounding like albums, that was even a time when I was in college when we got those the Drake and the Cole mixtapes and the Wale mixtapes, and then we got the Wiz and the Currencies and like I was saying before, Dom Kennedy and
Oh
things
yeah.
like that. Even Nipsey, Nipsey
Yeah.
had in the
He's a
game with
part
it
of that.
too, because Crenshaw wasn't considered an album either. And that was a mixtape he sold for like $100 a pop, right? And Jay bought
Right.
all the mixtapes, yeah. So it was just like there's so many, and
Victory
even
Lap was technically his first studio album.
man, and even
Wow.
Dipset had mixtapes in the game.
Well, I love it, man. Great times, man. We had a great discussion today. I didn't think we were going to get through all that, but we got through everything in record
Yes.
time. Is there anything that we missed? I'm trying to think. I mean, Jeezy's legacy, man. I think we could do a whole nother show on that. Yeah, I think we covered everything, man. Rest in peace to DJ Unk. Rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. And man,
Facts.
some new music on the way, I'm sure. But I know that was one thing we did want to talk about. Maybe that can be for next week. But
Mhm.
where are the artists with the new music?
Yeah, definitely. I hope by next week it could change the tone a little bit. We'll get somebody announcing something. I mean, I've been seeing the clips wrapping up saying the album is done. So I guess the clips is gonna be coming soon. I haven't heard much any many developing stories around Game and Documentary 3.
Oh yeah.
But we got a preview of what Two Chains is doing with Larry June. Two
Okay.
Chains spitting. I seen a clip of the video of it. Like, so that's to come. And that's gonna be produced by the Alchemist. So
Okay. I
I'm
hear
looking.
Uncle Murda's new album is dope.
Yeah.
That came out the other day. And what was I gonna say? Oh, Kanye's linked up with
Yeah.
Jim Jones, so I don't know what's coming out of that, but
I want to know what's coming from that too. I'm kind of like I'm interested in what's going on with that. I
yeah,
was kind
with
of
Kanye out here wearing Dipset chains and stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I was kind of confused with what's going on. So we'll see if Jim make it on the album. I'll be big for him.
yeah, or
I
if
always
Ye makes it on Jim's album, I think that'd be crazy too. So
Yeah, I always like Jim, and throughout everything that's going on, Jim has this interesting link with the youth, man. Like he's still able to not look like the older cat. Like I've seen him do music with the Migos before, they split up. I seen
that
him,
song was fire.
Yeah, it's like I even like what he did with Mano with the Lobby Boys. He still has a good link with the youth or how his music output is, and it's kind of interesting. So we'll see what's coming out of what's going on with Kanye. So, but
Well,
artists,
before we get out of here, can you believe that Culture is 8 years old today? The
that's
Migos out. Speaking of them,
that's
yeah,
crazy.
Culture is 8 years old. Now, I will say this about Culture. I think Bad and Bougie is a top 50 hip hop song of all time. I could be biased.
I
I don't
agree.
know.
I agree.
Um, but Culture, the first 5 songs on there, bangers. T-shirt, Call Casting, Bad and Bougie, Get Right With You, and Slippery. Like, you could go to the
Ah,
gym, get on the
man,
treadmill, and say, "Boom, we're gonna start here." And by the time your workout is halfway over, you know what I'm saying, you're through those records.
a
Though I
time.
feel like that album is what made Migos the international stars that they became.
Yeah, man.
Bad and Bougie is the driving force.
Damn. But great conversation, man. Shout out to all the journalists that contributed to the game, with
Yeah,
Source, whatever, Double XL, all of them. Because at the end of the day, I was reading those Double XL and Source magazine saying that's what I want to do. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like,
they made us.
I was listening to radio saying that's what I want to do, So those arts is never going to be undermined or minimized. So shout out to them and shout out to the DJ, which is undermined or underrated, or not even underrated. They're just like unsung heroes. My favorite DJ of all time is Jazzy Jeff. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? I love what Jazzy Jeff does. His transitions is impeccable. I watched Juice and that made me want to DJ.
nice.
More than being an artist. And I can get busy on the mic, but there's elements of within hip hop that I enjoyed the most. Not only from print media to radio to DJing to all of that stuff. These are things that I enjoyed about hip hop so much, and everybody has solidified their space in it. And to see that they're battling within each other internally the way they do is kind of corny. But shout out to these DJs, DJ Smalls. I remember having the DJ Smalls mixtapes. That's why I got hip to a lot of ATL stuff. But I also, DJ Drama, Gangsta Grills, here, Bigger Ranking. Like, shout out to all the mixtape DJs, man. I know there's plenty that I'm missing out on. The Drama King. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Shout,
Philly, man.
Slay,
You know
K
what I'm
Slay,
saying?
recipe K Slay. But
Yeah.
DJ Cool. There's a lot of dope shit. A lot of dope mixtape DJs. So yeah.
Well, yes, man. Hit like and subscribe, everybody. We appreciate y'all joining us, and play this one back, man. I think we got a lot of content out of this where we can cut up in sections too, because we talked about pretty much everything today.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to Leroy, man. Like I said, like, subscribe, holla at y'all next week.